Okay, I'm going live. Please watch your language. Going live. Yes, please.
Do it. What? What? We have more? A quarter.
Go down.
Austin. Yeah.
It's expensive.
Plus a hotel.
You know that the normal rate for this hotel is $500 a night. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I have never ever paid more than about $249 a night for a hotel, and even then I felt bad, even though it wasn't my money. I think we're done. Yeah, I'm a cheap ass by nature, so it's like I realize this isn't out of my pocket. So we would have to look into the anyway.
No, we need to wait another 6 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, you said usually wait 3 Eastern time.
Yes.
Tell you the gospel of the cheapskate gospel.
Yes. Thou shalt not pay us $300 a night for a hotel room. It is the third commandment.
And I know those two.
Thou shalt not pay us. See, you're way at 2. I don't even want to get into that. 6, 7, 8. No, you don't. Who's the second? Who's the primary for 2 right now? Then you do. You can sit up there and you have quorum. You can start the meeting. For the record, what happens is when people who aren't normally in charge are in charge, their job is to sit here and adjourn the meeting. Oh, okay.
You got back on already?
I almost got away with it yesterday. I mentioned it.
Feedback.
Haynes wasn't back.
So,
I'm vice chair.
oh,
okay, yes.
I think the connection is kind of slow, so I wouldn't worry about it.
It's changed a lot.
Same as your
A musical
I was just like, okay, and it didn't like I'm working on it back here.
Oh, yes. Membership money from the Karen.
Is this from the...
I'm handing it off to you.
The town council can send. So that's pretty cool. Tax-free time.
There you go, you got the last one. Local Austin guys,
So that's
Elizabeth, just go out into the pool. You need silverware? Just go out by the pool deck. They got silverware in there. Do you need silverware? Can and I?
Robert, do you have the number?
Yeah, if I can get or a spoon, fork or spoon.
Robert, do you have the number? And can you work the magic in like 5 minutes?
Okay.
Or 3 minutes? However many minutes. And then is the camera back on or no?
Everyone's on.
I'm not seeing a blue light.
yeah, the light, the camera's not on.
Mr. DeMille.
Look like it's in front of us.
Justin's broadcasting.
I have no other job to do here. I can do that.
I thought you had 6 of them.
Not here. Here I have 1, and I already did it.
No, you're right. That's the still image.
Check the resolution.
Live. What's this? It's live.
It says it's live,
No, it is
but it's
live.
definitely the still image, though.
But
That's
it's,
not.
no. It's just back. That's all. I think there's just a lag.
I don't know. 4 minutes.
Did you pause it?
I did for a moment and brought it back, and it says it's live. It says it's muted. Here I have 1, and I already did it. I assume that means they can hear us now. Check the resolution.
Live. What's this? It's live.
It says it's live,
No, it
but
is
it's
live.
definitely the still image, though.
But
That's
it's,
not.
no. It's just back. That's all.
Is this on our
I think
YouTube
this
channel?
is the lag. I'm going there right now.
I don't know. 4 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I did for a moment and brought it back, and it says it's 3 o'clock. Is that right? It says it's muted. Here I have 1, and I already did it. You assume that means they can hear us now. We have a long way to go. Resolution. Long fucking way. It says it's live, but it's definitely the still image. So that's not.
No, it's just that. Yeah. It's on.
Are you seeing nothing though? Is this on our?
Well, maybe the camera's not on.
I don't know. 4 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I did for a moment. Hang on. It says it's live. It says it's muted. Here I have one. But we have. Oh, here we go. Here we go. That means they can hear us. Yes, but do you see? Long fucking what I'm sure now it's not, but it's definitely the still image. So that's not.
No, why is this? Yeah. This should show.
Are you seeing nothing? Right. Is this on our?
Well, maybe the camera's not on.
I don't know. 4 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I did for a moment. Hang on. It says it's live. It says it's muted. Here I have one. But we have. Oh, here we go. Here we go. That means they can hear us. Yes, but do you see? What I'm sure now it's not, but it's definitely the still image. So that's not.
No, why is this? Yeah. This should show.
Are you seeing nothing? Right. Is this on our?
Well, maybe the camera's
for
not
7
on.
minutes. I don't know. 4 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I did for a moment. I don't know what this is. It says it's live. It says it's muted. Here I have one. We have. Oh, here we go. Here we go. That means they can hear us. Yes, but do you see they're here? What I'm sure the question is why is it's definitely the still image. We're getting audio.
Why is this? I mean, there was all these conditions show.
Are you seeing nothing? Right. Green light.
So maybe the camera's
For
not
7
on.
minutes. I don't know. 4 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I did for a moment. I don't know what this is. It says it's live. It says it's muted. Here I have one. We have. Oh, here we go. That means they can hear us. Yes, but do you see they're here? What I'm sure the question is why is it's definitely the still image. We're getting audio.
Why is this? I mean, there was all these conditions show.
Are you seeing nothing? Right. Green light.
So maybe the camera's
For
not
7
on.
minutes. I don't know. 4 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I did for a moment. I don't know what this is. It says it's live. It says it's muted. Here I have one. We have. Oh, here we go. This guy.
That's a lot to it.
Yes, but do you see they're here? What I'm sure the question is why is it's definitely the still image. We're getting audio.
Why is this? I mean, there was all these conditions show.
Are you seeing this? Right. Green light.
So maybe the camera's
For
not
7
on.
minutes. 2 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I think it is. It should. I don't know what this is. Give it a minute. A minute. It says it's muted. Here I have one. We have. Oh, here we go. This guy.
That's a lot to it.
Yes, but do you see they're here? That looks weird. What I'm sure the question is why is it's definitely the still image. We're getting audio.
Why is this?
Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. Green light.
So maybe the camera's
For
not
7
on.
minutes. 2 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I think it is. It should. I don't know what this is. Give it a minute. A minute. It says it's muted. Here I have one. We have. Oh, here we go. This guy.
That's a lot to it.
Yes, but do you see they're here? That looks weird. What I'm sure the question is why is it's definitely the still image. We're getting audio.
Why is this?
Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. Green light.
So maybe the camera's
For
not
7
on.
minutes. 2 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I think it is. It should. I don't know what this is. Give it a minute. A minute. It says it's muted. Here I have one. We have. Oh, here we go. This guy.
That's a lot to it.
Yes, but do you see they're here? That looks weird. What I'm sure the question is why is it's definitely the still image. We're getting audio.
Why is this?
Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. Green light.
So maybe the camera's
For
not
7
on.
minutes. 2 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I think it is. It should. I don't know what this is. Give it a minute. A minute. It says it's muted. Here I have one. We have. Oh, here we go. This guy.
That's a lot to it.
Yes, but do you see they're here? That looks weird. What I'm sure the question is why is it's definitely the still image. We're getting audio.
Why is this?
Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. Green light.
So maybe the camera's
For
not
7
on.
minutes. 2 minutes. It says there's people viewing. I think it is. It should. I don't know what this is. Give it a minute. A
High five. This guy.
Yeah, but looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Give it a minute. One. We have an hour here.
High five. This guy.
Yeah, looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Give it a minute. One. We have an hour here.
High five. This guy.
Yeah, looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Give it a minute. One. We have an hour here.
High five. This guy.
Yeah, looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Give it a minute. One. We have an hour here.
High five. This guy.
Yeah, looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Give it a minute. One. We have an hour here.
High five. This guy.
Yeah, looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Give it a minute. One. We have an hour here.
High five. This guy.
Yeah, looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Give it a minute. One. We have an hour here.
High five. This guy.
Yeah, looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Give it a minute. One. We have an hour here.
High five. This guy.
Yeah, looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Give it a minute. One. We have an hour here.
High five. This guy.
Yeah, looks good. But I'm still watching it. That one still is. We're getting started. Now it's coming up. Are you seeing this? Right. For 7 minutes. Scissors people are going to pick it in. It should. Let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? Green. For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a minute. We have an hour here. This guy. Yeah, let's get there. What I'm seeing right now is that one still is. Now it's going up. Are you seeing this? For 7 minutes. Give it a min Why is
to do a petition or pay a filing fee. And these are the same petition requirements and filing fee requirements that are imposed on major party candidates, but the difference is major parties nominate by primary. So those requirements are the method by which the state regulates access to the primary ballot. It really makes no sense to apply those requirements to parties that nominate by convention, which minor parties in Texas do. So we actually think that the challenge to those new requirements that were adopted in 2019, ironically, may be one of the strongest parts of the case, because there's just really no rational reason for the state to adopt those new requirements. It really looks like it was just intended to add yet another burden, yet another obstacle for the Libertarian Party. So that is the status of the Texas case. We just filed it. The state has not answered or moved to dismiss yet. We're anticipating that they will seek an extension of time to be able to do that. And so once we hear from them, we'll have a better idea about the schedule for litigating the entire case. We are hoping to litigate it fast enough so that we can get relief in time for 2020, at least from those new requirements that were adopted in 2019. So we're probably going to be asking the court for a somewhat expedited schedule, and we'll do that at the first pretrial status conference. The other update is the Libertarian Party of Maine. I am wrapping up a complaint on their behalf Monday, which I will be sharing with my co-counsel and then with the plaintiffs in that case. For those who don't know, the Libertarian Party of Maine qualified for the first time to be on the ballot in 2016, and they did that with the help of the LNC by enrolling 5,000 new members in their party. What happened after that, however, was the state requires the party within a single election cycle, meaning within the 2018 election, to enroll another 5,000 members, and then to ensure that all 10,000 members actually vote in the general election. And if they don't do that, they are disqualified. All of the voters that registered as Libertarian are reclassified as unenrolled, which is equivalent of an independent voter in Maine. And what makes it particularly difficult for the party to jump from 5,000 to 10,000 members really in the space of a single election cycle is that they have to nominate by primary. There's no other way for them to put their nominees on the general election ballot. And the problem with the nominating by primary is that the signature requirements are the same for a new party as they are for the established major parties. And that is, you need to get 2,000 signatures to put a candidate for statewide office on the general election ballot. But the only people who are eligible to sign are members of the party, registered members of the party. So when the signature requirement is 2,000 and you've only got about 5,000 registered members, you're talking about, a demonstration of support from approximately 40% of the voters eligible to sign your petitions, which is pretty clearly unconstitutional under Supreme Court precedent. So we'll be challenging the combination of all of these requirements and plan to file the lawsuit probably in early August, potentially before the end of July, but the way these things go, I would expect it would actually be more like early August before we do that. But I think it's a good case, and I know that the folks in Maine are anxious that we get it filed. Again, we're seeking to get relief in time for the 2020 general election, so that will be the timetable for that case. Apart from that, I just had a couple of minor updates. One is, so the two things that I just mentioned, Texas and Maine, are not included on my special counsel's report, and I need to update that. In connection with that, I just wanted to make a request. I also know that there's a case that we just won in Arkansas, which I was not involved in any way, but I do want to include that on the report. And I believe that litigation has just been filed or is about to be filed in Iowa, although I don't have any connection with that litigation either. So I just wanted to make a request of all the LNC members, if you are aware that states in your region are going to be filing ballot access litigation, please let me know. I want to include that stuff in my report, of course, but also just so that I can be aware of the cases, the claims that we're asserting, and be in a position to provide any support that I can. But I will update this report so that those new cases are included on the next one. And then finally, just a matter of housekeeping, I am going to be on vacation from August 3rd to August 11th. I will be on email if I'm needed, but I just want to let you know that I will be out of the office during that time. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Thank you, Oliver. I have Dr. Lark, Mr. Nikela, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Longstreth, in that order. So go ahead, Dr. Lark.
Yes. First of all, good afternoon, Mr. Hall. As always, thank you for the fine work that you've done on behalf of the Libertarian Party. I'd like to inquire if you could provide more information concerning the situation in Pennsylvania. Steve Sheets, chair of the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania, contacted me. Evidently, the three fellows, I think three candidates in Northampton County, evidently there's not been a resolution to their situation. I was wondering if you had any more information about that situation.
Dr. Lark, I do not have any updates at this time. I did consult with them when they were first contacted by investigators for the state, and I spoke with the investigative arm and asked them, provide us with some basis for your inquiry, and they were not willing to do that, at least not on the phone when I spoke with them, and they told me they were going to follow up, and they never did. And at that point, I told the candidates, look, we've put an inquiry back to them asking what is the basis for their investigation, and they haven't even been willing to tell us that, so let's just sit tight. I do know that they were contacted. The state never did follow up with me, but the candidates themselves were contacted, and some sort of investigation is ongoing, but I have not been apprised of any developments.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Okay. Next time, Mr. Nikela.
Yes, hello there, Mr. Hall. This is Stephen Nikela, Region 2 rep. And I just wanted to make sure if you weren't already aware of the ongoing litigation in Georgia regarding U.S. House ballot access, where they have very high barriers for entry. They have a very high unrealistic petition ratio that has never been met by any third-party candidate ever. So I wanted to know, has Ryan Graham or anybody from Georgia reached out to you regarding that? Are you aware of that? And if so, have you given them any counsel in that matter?
Yes, I am aware of that. I think you meant Brian Sells, right? That's their attorney?
Yeah. Yes. Ryan Graham's a chair. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we are aware of that case. That one is included in this report, and I think it's a good case. I know Brian Sells is an excellent attorney, and we did provide a little bit of assistance in the form of a declaration that the chair signed off on behalf of the Libertarian National Committee, which sets forth the National Party's interest in having candidates in the Georgia Party be on the ballot for U.S. Congress. So we were able to provide that assistance, and I'm in touch with Brian Sells. He knows that if he needs anything from us, he knows where to get it.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
All right, Mr. Phillips, then Mr. Longstreth, then Mr. Redpath.
Hi, Mr. Hall. Just real quick, have you heard from Chris Holbrook from Minnesota regarding their lawsuit?
I have not.
Okay, yeah, they're filing a ballot access lawsuit. And then in relation to Iowa, they've got that one. They've also filed a second one against a sitting House rep for blocking their constituents on social media, just to keep you apprised of both of those.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. I will look into those cases.
Yeah, Minnesota has hired counsel there. They've got somebody, but I'm sure they would love your input.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak to that for a moment, as long as he mentioned Mississippi, or Minnesota?
Does it need to happen before Mr. Longstreth?
No, not good. No.
Go ahead, Mr. Longstreth.
Mr. Hall, thank you for being on here with us. I was just wondering if you could give an update on the AZLP. I understand that they wanted to file a cert, and I wanted to know if you guys decided that that was the best course of action or not.
Yes, yes, thank you for the question. I wanted to update the LNC on that one as well. I know in the last 2 meetings at least, I've been updating.
Oops. Hello?
Lose you?
You stumped
Unfortunately, the Ninth Circuit affirmed the district court's decision. I think it's a terrible decision. I think it's an unfair decision. Most unfair about it is that the judge that wrote the Ninth Circuit opinion opined that the evidence in the case was irrelevant and that it didn't need to be addressed. This, she said in a footnote, but then later in her opinion, she goes on to characterize the opinion as minimal and that it demonstrated only a minor burden on the party regarding imposed by the primary ballot access signature requirements that were challenging. This is just manifestly unfair. There's no way, if she had actually addressed the evidence, she could accurately characterize it as showing only a minimal burden. And what's just terribly hypocritical about it, in my opinion, is that this same judge has ruled against plaintiffs in ballot access cases in the past because they failed to present evidence. So there was a Green Party case where they were challenging a February filing deadline, I believe it was. And they really just asserted a purely legal challenge, and they said, you know, courts typically strike down filing deadlines as late as April or May or even June in some cases. And so they relied on that precedent to say that a February deadline is therefore clearly unconstitutional, which I think is not an unreasonable claim to assert. But in that case, the judge said, you know, it may be unconstitutionally early based on this precedent, but there's no way I can hold it unconstitutional in the absence of actual evidence demonstrating that the unconstitutional deadline burdens the plaintiffs. So in that opinion, she went to great lengths to emphasize the critical importance that evidence has in every ballot access case. And yet in our case, and then in another case that was argued the very same day right after our case, this was Rocky de la Fuente's challenge to the independent presidential signature requirement in California, which is almost 200,000 signatures. In that case, too, she disregarded almost all the evidence, kind of summarily concluded that 200,000 signatures is not a severe burden. You know, she mentions in passing that the plaintiff had submitted evidence that to collect that many signatures costs somewhere in the order of $2 or $3 million. And she just dismissed it and didn't address any of the other evidence that he submitted in support of his claims. And so just the hypocrisy of a judge who, you know, relies on the critical importance of evidence to rule against plaintiffs when they have a strong, purely legal claim, and then disregards the evidence in cases like ours and Rocky de la Fuente's when we do present evidence, and she just disregards it and says, oh, it's not relevant. It's a very frustrating case. It's a very frustrating position to be in when, you know, the judge doesn't seem to be following not only Supreme Court precedent, recognizing the importance of evidence in ballot access cases, but her own actual decisions in which she has gone even further than the Supreme Court to emphasize the importance of evidence. Anyway, that's all background at this point. It's true that the Ninth Circuit is now affirmed, and we are discussing the possibility of filing a petition for cert. I've notified the plaintiffs that I'm willing to do the cert petition for free. I've asked them simply to cover the costs of filing, which would be probably about $1,500, and I haven't gotten word back from them about whether they are able to cover those costs, but I'm I feel pretty confident that one way or the other we'll find those funds, and I think that we will seek cert in that case. And I've told them from the beginning of the case that I think it really is a good case for cert, because the underlying issue in the case is, what is the proper standard courts should use when measuring the modicum of support that states may require? So we have all these ballot access cases where various signature requirements are upheld, but courts often fail to specify what the relevant pool of voters is. Sometimes it's registered voters, sometimes it's actual voters, sometimes it's something else. And there's no clear standard, and so you often have these cases where courts are saying, well, 2% is less than 3%, therefore 2% is okay. But critically, it matters 2% of what? And here in the Arizona case, the pool of voters, now remember, this is a primary ballot access case. It's about the requirements for appearing on the Libertarian Party's primary ballot, in which only Libertarians can vote. And yet, in a pretty clear move intended to exclude Libertarians from the ballot, the Republican-controlled legislature rewrote the law and said the signature requirement is now going to be defined not as a percentage of eligible voters, meaning not as a percentage of registered Libertarians, but rather as a percentage of registered Libertarians plus all independent voters. Independent voters, there's about 1 million of them in Arizona, as opposed to about 30,000 registered Libertarians. So when you increase the pool that size and you say it's a 1% requirement, the signature requirements go off the charts. And when measured according to the appropriate standard, which is recognized either implicitly or explicitly in every ballot access case, that is eligible voters. Who are the voters eligible to vote for the candidate seeking ballot access? When measured against that pool, the signature requirements translate to something like 30 or 40% of the eligible pool, which is clearly unconstitutional. The Ninth Circuit got around that little problem by saying, well, no, the statute says that independent voters are eligible, and that's what an eligible voter means, notwithstanding the fact that independents are not actually eligible to vote in the Libertarian Party's primary. So again, I think her reasoning is disingenuous, and it's unfortunate to come up against a judge like that who I think is willing to twist the plain meaning of words like eligible voter. But that's where we are with that case. But that's why I think it presents a strong issue for cert, because again, I think there's confusion about what is the appropriate standard for measuring the modicum of support. And here we have a case that presents that quite squarely. And if you measure the modicum of support required in Arizona as a percentage of eligible voters, it's clearly unconstitutional. If you measure it as a percentage of eligible voters plus 1 million ineligible independents, then they can call it 1%. But that's the issue. What is the standard? And again, every other ballot access case, not just Supreme Court, but every other federal district and circuit court of appeal, they all recognize the standard is eligible voters, whether they say so explicitly or not. And the reason for that is obvious. Independent voters who are ineligible to vote in the Arizona Libertarian Party primary have no reason or incentive to support Libertarian candidates for whom they are ineligible to vote. So I think it's a good case, and I think it squarely presents an important issue that the Supreme Court really should resolve. So I do anticipate that we'll seek cert.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
All right, Mr. Redpath.
We're out of time on this, Mr. Chairman, but I move to extend for me.
Second.
For how long? Just a
Can
couple
we
of...
say 5 minutes because Ms. Harlos is trying to go?
Yes, yes. Oh, yes, of course, Ms. Harlow.
Okay.
5 minutes, yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Is there an objection?
No.
Go ahead.
Okay. Regarding Minnesota, I referred, it's Chris Holbrook.
Is the chair, yes.
Okay.
I referred him, Oliver, this is Bill Redpath, how you doing?
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Fine, thank you. I spoke to Richard Winger about the Minnesota situation, and he said you were so busy, you've got a number of things on your plate. And so I referred Minnesota to Jim Linger in Tulsa, and I believe they've spoken. Is that right? And is Jim taking? But I've never heard other than they were going to speak.
I believe that he's taken the case.
Okay, all right. That's that. I didn't know that, but I know they were talking. And it was Bob Bastris in Iowa, I believe. I recruited Bob Bastris, West Virginia University law professor, and bless him, he's done fantastic work for us over the years. And he said, yeah, I'm interested in that Iowa case. And but it's up to both parties to get local counsel. And the other thing is, when do we have to decide? When do we have to decide about the $1,500 for cert on the Arizona case?
Not there,
the decision came down on May 31st. We have 90 days. I could ask for an extension, which I think is routinely granted. So it's not urgent. And just to be clear, I was not presenting that as a request to the LNC. I did make that request of the state party. And in fact, their former chair, who is still the named plaintiff in the case, Michael Kielski, just emailed me back today, just before I got on the call, to say that he was fully supportive of that, and he thinks that the others involved in the state party are as well. So I think they may be able to come up with these funds, but I don't have final word.
Okay. Well, I would just like.
Are you confusing the Arizona case with the FEC case?
No, I'm
Okay.
talking Arizona.
Okay.
And what I'm just saying is that, I mean, if they don't have the dough, I know we're talking finances here, but I mean, we need to, come hell or high water, have cert on that case. And if the money has to come from the LNC, I hope it doesn't, but if it has to, so be it. I just wanted to make sure that we don't miss any deadlines here over $1,500.
No, certainly we will not do that, and I take your point, Bill. I feel the same way. I mean, I'm just really disgusted about how that case turned out from beginning to end, really. And apart from that, I think the issues that it raises are really important and deserve the Supreme Court's attention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for everything.
Ms. Harlos?
Thank you.
It's been a while since I take a look at that Arizona one. Is the argument still, though, with the pool of eligible voters, that they're kind of blaming the Arizona party itself to force them to open up their primary, to say that the only reason the independents can't vote in their primaries because they opted out, and they could opt them back in, and then they would have an interest? Because I know that was an argument early along, that it seemed like they were trying to strong-arm the party into opening their primaries.
You're absolutely right, and it's yet another disingenuous aspect of the opinion, because the Libertarian Party had their primary closed, and I know there was, the Republicans have been kind of toying with the Libertarian Party in Arizona for some time now, and I believe in connection with their effort to remain ballot qualified several years back, the Arizona Libertarians briefly entertained the idea of opening up their primary. I'm not sure why that would have impacted their ability to remain ballot qualified, but I believe there was some short period when they were entertaining that or actually attempted to do it. But the fact is, for years before this law was passed, their primary had always been closed, and I think that's a pretty reasonable position. The Libertarian Party wants only registered Libertarians to have a vote in the candidates they select to be their nominees. And yet the Ninth Circuit did, as you correctly characterize it, essentially blame the Libertarians for creating this problem, both in oral argument and in the written opinion. They suggest that the Libertarians have created the problem by refusing to allow independents to vote in their primary. And the district court opinion went even further and suggested that the Libertarians had transformed had attempted to transform a constitutional statute into an unconstitutional one by their conduct. Now just think about what the court is saying there, as if, any citizen engaging in core protected First Amendment activity could somehow transform a constitutional statute into an unconstitutional statute through that conduct. It's really absurd on its face, and I'm surprised to see that a federal court would commit something like that to writing. But that's what they did. But the underlying constitutional issue here is that, again, the Ninth Circuit itself has recognized this, and so has the Supreme Court. A critical element of the freedom to associate protected under the First Amendment is the freedom not to associate. And so the Ninth Circuit, in a prior decision, had already upheld the Arizona Libertarian Party's challenge to a prior statutory scheme in which Arizona was attempting by law to force the Libertarians to include non-members in their primary. And in that case, the Ninth Circuit, I think it had no other choice. It had to follow the Supreme Court precedent that was very clear on this point, correctly held. This is a violation of the freedom to associate. The state cannot require a political party to allow non-members to vote in its primary. So in our case, the situation is a little bit different. The statute doesn't require libertarians to allow independents to vote in the primary, but it does effectively compel them to seek support from independents in order to get on the primary ballot. Either they seek support from independent voters, in other words, they seek signatures from independent voters, or they rely exclusively on libertarians, in which case the signature requirements are off the charts unconstitutional. So they've got a choice between two unconstitutional options: compelled association with non-members, or signature requirements that are clearly unconstitutional under Supreme Court precedent. And again, the Ninth Circuit resolved that by saying, oh, that's the Libertarians' fault. It's really a disheartening decision, and yet another reason I think we should be seeking cert.
Time has expired. Dr. Lark was seeking to be recognized. Is there any objection to hearing from Dr. Lark? Hearing none, go ahead.
First of all, Mr. Hall, again, thank you for all the good work that you've done. If the cost of filing the cert petition is in the ballpark of $1,500, I would ask that you see what you can do, but if necessary, I'll pay the freight for that. If for no other reason, that I would like to see you take your fingers and poke them in the eyes of the Ninth Circuit. So, but if necessary, I'll underwrite the cost.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Lark. I will let the state party folks know, but again, I think that they may be able to come up with the funds, but it's good to know that we have support from you and the LNC if necessary.
It will not bother me to find out that they were able to come up with the funds.
I didn't think it would.
All right. With that, I think time has expired. Thank you very much, Mr. Hall, for your report, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Okay, thanks everybody. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a good day.
Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is the population of the awards committee for 10 minutes. That was on the agenda for this?
Right.
Okay.
There were only 2 applicants.
There were only 2 applicants.
Pardon me, Madam Secretary, I don't think that's true.
I only
Dr.
had
Lark
2.
says it is.
If I may.
Go ahead, Dr. Lark.
Go ahead, please.
Pardon me. Heavens to Betsy, let me see if I can find it. I believe there were, you forwarded 2 messages to me dated May 13th from a Mr., let's see, a Mr. Bloody hell, that's not his name actually.
Mr. Bloody Hell.
This is a gentleman from Florida, Mr. Larry Gillis of Cape Coral, Florida, and then Mr. Steve Rivette from somewhere here in Texas, Dripping Springs, Texas. They had both submitted applications to the LP Awards Committee.
I must have misspelled that. And then there was the 2.
You forwarded them to me. They're dated May 13th, this year, of course.
Okay.
3:55 a.m. my time, I guess 1:55 a.m. your time.
Sounds about right.
So I think there are actually 4 applicants.
All right. So the names of all the applicants?
I'm pulling up those two, so it's Mr. Redpath, Mr. Laurie, and then I need to pull up, I'm looking for those two where I sent them over.
Mr. Hagan, I
Tim
think.
Hagan.
Oh, no, wasn't Bill?
He should, but I don't think he is.
Let me go look in one note, I put them in there.
I'll nominate myself. What the hell?
Hagan is in there.
I'll nominate.
That's fine.
Yeah, Hagan and Lark. And now, Mr. Red,
I'll nominate.
and I'm gonna get, would you have those other two names in front of you?
Yes, the latter was Steve Ravette, spelled R-A-V-E-T, and he gives the address of Dripping Springs, Texas. The other gentleman, as I mentioned, Mr. Gillis, Lawrence Gillis, from Cape Coral, Florida.
Okay,
That's Gillis, G-I-L-L-I-S.
thank you.
There are 5 members of the committee, including up to 2 non-LNC members. At this point, it sounds like there are 5 nominees for the committee, including 2
2 are non-LNC.
non-LNC members. What a happy coincidence. Is there
I'll make a
a motion to suspend the rules to elect the slate by acclamation?
I will make that one. Second.
Mr. Smith has made a motion to suspend those rules. Ms. Billiou?
Someone who's claiming to be from Texas who wants to be on the awards committee. I've never heard of the person and have no knowledge of them.
Okay. Dr. Lark?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the gentleman's motion, it would be possible for us to populate the LNC part now and then populate the rest of the committee. In fact, I think in the past we've actually done that.
Okay.
So there is historical precedent for that.
He seems to be an alien on there.
So do applications exist from these
I
two people?
forwarded the one to Whitney, but I'll forward it to everybody off
Yeah.
list, because there's personal information on it.
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah,
Lark.
we appreciate it.
Point of personal privilege, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Hagan and Mr. Redpath would be superb members. I've had the pleasure of working with both of them on the awards committee. They possess the length of time in the party. They possess the accomplishments that I think are important for anyone to serve on the awards committee. And I would highly endorse both of those gentlemen for the positions.
Would someone like to make a motion to suspend the rules to elect by acclamation 3 LNC members of the awards committee?
I will.
Mr. Phillips, second? Second. Is there any objection to proceeding in that fashion? Hearing no objection, all in favor of Mr. Hagan, Mr. Redpath, and Dr. Lark as the LNC members of the award committee, please raise your hand. Opposed? Unanimous. Congratulations, gentlemen. And then I guess it sounds like we could proceed with the LNC members of the awards committee coming back to the larger LNC once we've seen the applications with a
I think that would be
recommendation to
appropriate.
vote in some
Mr.
form.
Chairman, at no point in the past has the awards committee ever really gotten cranked up in terms of solicitation of nominations, really until the beginning of the year in which the national convention will take place. So we have plenty of time.
Would it be appropriate to postpone the population of those other 2 members to the next LNC meeting?
That would be fine, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any objection to that?
Although I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that if we revisit this, the fact that these 2 gentlemen did submit their applications in a timely manner, I personally think that members of the committee should give them special consideration.
Okay. So,
Personal request, if I may.
yes. So I will make a note to add that
Thank you, Mr.
to the
Chairman.
agenda for the next population of the other 2 for the next time. With that, we will move to the audit committee for 30 minutes. And Ms. Fox is passing around things. So people are getting their documents while we get ready.
document?
I've just got my board.
Four? Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I believe the documents are one-page LNC Audit Committee report on 2018 financial statements, a board disclosure letter dated December 31st, 2018, audited financial statements year ended December 31st, 2018, and then a management letter dated December 31st, 2018.
So 1, 2, 3, 4 documents?
Yes, sir.
So what is the fourth document?
Your report.
Oh,
All right, so everyone should have the one-pager, the financial statements, the management letter, and the board disclosure letter. If anyone does not have one of these 4 documents, this would be a good time to say so. And with that, Ms. Fox, if you would like to present a report, please do.
All right. Well, first for those people who are new on the LNC, I just want to explain what we do on the audit committee. So we will look at the pre-audit numbers and address any questions we have just to make sure that we are understanding changes from year to year and what those mean. We were very happy with the numbers. They all made sense based on 2018 being a convention year and an election year. Lauren Dougherty changing from a contractor to a paid employee. Those pretty much explain the differences between the numbers of the 2 years. Myself, Richard Bowen, who is here, and Aaron Adams are members of the committee. Besides reviewing the financial statements, we also address the issues presented in the management report, and we'll also speak to the adjustments that were made during the audit that are included in the board disclosure report. So my report mostly focuses on the management report. And I'm happy to say that this is my 4th time on the audit committee, my 4th term, and this is the cleanest audit I've seen. Thank you to Robert and the rest of the staff. So really there was really only what I consider really one issue that came up in this audit. Most of what came up in the comments on the management report were more just making us aware of changes in reporting requirements. So we brought up the revenue recognition model, which really does not affect the party because it only deals in terms of what we deal with earned income, which would have minimal impact. So that is effective in 2019, but we don't really, we expect it to have minimal impact, if any. Accounting for leases, there's a new pronouncement by the Financial Accounting Standards Board effective 2020, which significantly changes the way that operating leases are reported, and this is more just an FYI from our auditor because we don't have any operating leases. So this really doesn't affect us, and once again, it's just making us aware of changes that might affect us. The annual budget projection was also brought up. He has brought this up in prior years. Mark Fry recommends that management enter the approved budget into QuickBooks. As the audit opinion, we have the same opinion we had last year that we don't have a concern in this respect, given that the treasurer includes the budget figures in his reports. So as long as we don't see any issue with the financial report. I'm going to skip over the non-for-profit reporting model because that one's probably going to be the part of the most discussion. And I'm going to go to the 5th point in my report, the software capitalization. That was the one deficiency that did come up in the audit. On the 2nd page of the management report, he does note that it's a significant deficiency but not a material weakness, so it did not affect the audit results. We still had favorable audit. But what he's addressing there is the fact that the $25,000 we spent for the CRM software was not capitalized where it should have been capitalized. We spent some time discussing software development costs during the audit, And we recommend, the audit committee recommends capitalizing development fees and software purchase costs in the future. So that was really the only real issue that came up during the audit. And that was the main part in the board disclosure report. It lists the different adjustments that were made. Most of those adjustments are pretty standard other than the $25,000 for the city CRO. So with that, we'll talk about the not-for-profit reporting model. So that, that new standard was effective in 2018. And you'll see that in addition to the other reports that are normal part of the audit report presented by Mark Fry, in addition, the statement of functional expenses, that is what came out of this new pronouncement. So when Mark Fry brought this up and with this reporting model, he suggested that we reduce the number of different programs that we report on our financial statements, because we currently have 14 and he considered that to be a bit excessive. So we did discuss this with Robert. We were in agreement with Robert that he came up with reducing the number from 14 to 8, and consider that this is not internal, this is just on our financial reporting. So the current 14 can stay, in my understanding, will remain for internal purposes, but we're going to roll some of them up into other programs for financial reporting purposes. So Rich Bowen is also a CPA, and he has worked with nonprofits, and he has worked with functional allocated expenses in the past. So Rich is going to speak a little bit more about this issue.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone's approval of having me join. This will be my first year on the audit committee, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. The Financial Accounting Standard Board, as many of you know, come up with pronouncements each year, make some changes here and there. This 2018 not-for-profit reporting model basically just affects the way the page 5 in your financial report, the functional allocation of expenses. A lot of people get confused about what that is. I'm not specifically happy with the term. I usually have to explain it to most of my nonprofits, and I'm going to explain it here to let you know how I usually will consult with people to come up with the categories. I like to use the term core activities, which Robert and I talked about, okay? Or, even better, the purpose of the organization. What is the actual purpose of the organization? So, for example, what we came up with to cut back to the 8 is, and again, please feel free to, if I've missed something, or maybe we can combine a little more, it is at our, it's our jurisdiction to do that. But we came up with basically 8. And these are just the overarching purposes of a political party. Everyone has admin and compensation, that's a given. So the ones we came up with were affiliate support, ballot access, candidate and campaign support, convention, fundraising, membership, other. What else is there? I mean, that's what we do, okay? And to go back to some of the 14, why are we taking them out? Well, for instance, one of the expense categories, which we considered functional, was litigation, okay? I don't consider litigation a purpose of this organization. It is a consequence of the things that we do, okay? Media, the same thing. We're not in the media business. Yeah, we want to be on TV, we want to be on radio, but it is still an expense to advocate for these other categories here. Keep in mind, these categories are just for financial reporting on page 5 of the financial statements. And for those of you who, again, are not familiar with GAAP, GAAP basically allows people, external parties, to take our financial statements, put them next to the Green Party's financial statements, put them next to the Republican or Democrat, and make sure we are comparing apples to apples. That's the basic issue with GAAP. Okay? say just the process that we did on page 3 of the management letter. The first paragraph, functional allocation. That's where the auditor brings up the information. Based on that, Mark's, I'll give you Mark's email. We broke it down a little bit and talked about it for a few days, but basically Mark, the auditors, which you should hear, his idea was, in lieu of maybe presenting all of the internally tracked programs in the audited financial statements going forward, maybe management could step back and summarize them functionally for reporting 4 or 5 major categories. We actually did end up coming up with 8. We have many clients that track more programs for internal purposes, but have summarized them into fewer categories for financial reporting purposes. This will be effective next year, as we had already completed the audit for this year. There was no reason to make that change this year, so it will take effect next year. Okay?
Does anyone have
Questions?
Mr. Bishop Henchman?
First, thanks to all of you for your hard work on this. This is excellent. Couldn't do it without you. Wonderful. You invited somebody to push back, so I'm going to take the bait and see if I can. The new other projects and programs category is primarily our marketing and outreach expenses, and then I guess whatever else defies classification into the other areas. To me, most auditors I talk to really want miscellaneous, wherever that appears to be as small and explainable as possible.
Correct.
And I'm worried that, we don't do no marketing and outreach. It's a fair amount of what we do. It's maybe not the top 5 things we do, which I think you accurately classify, but I'm worried this other line item will be very large in our financial statements going forward. So I'm wondering whether marketing and outreach should perhaps be the 9th category and other can be other. So that's me taking your bait of pushing back on the recommendation.
All right, if I look at page 5 in the financial statements, and I look at outreach programs last year as of December 18, the total cost was $49,000. $49,000 out of a total of expenses of $1.9 million. Somebody has a calculator? Can you tell me what that percentage is?
Well, I ballpark it, but of course what we're talking about is combining media relations and outreach and brand development. So we would have,
so that would
whatever
be,
that number is, it's almost
so that would be
200,000.
It's 150.
Yeah.
All right, so
$150,000 to $200,000 as other projects or programs.
Right, so it would be $150,000 out of actually almost exactly $2 million.
So you get about that's a 7%. Yep.
I'm worried that makes it less clear, not more
Well, again, that's going to be a subjective view. I have no issue with that. The question is an amount of 7.5% going to
I just picture.
Is that going to generate questions externally? Because again, remember we're talking about the third party came in and said, all right, other expenses are 7.5%. Are they going to want to see a break?
Well, let me put it to the body. If you saw a line item that said
Right,
$150,000
exactly. That's what you need to
under
ask.
other, would you have any follow-up questions?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Kraus?
Okay, so just again, the internal reporting won't change. So you have the internal amounts, as we talked about previously, like the statement of operation and the profit and loss statement, which even takes in greater detail. So that will not change. But we're talking about strictly the audited financials, and the main purpose that Mark wanted to do this is so that it frankly fits on one page. To make it easier for people to look at.
Right, and the other thing, and again, keep this in mind. I understand, and that's the reason I brought it up. I wanted to hear, what people think, but keep in mind, we are all, quote, insiders. Of course, we're going to want to know what that number is. However, a third party, an external person that is looking at the audited financial statements, are they going to worry about 7.5% of the? I don't have the answer to this question. I'm just saying. Remember, this is just for external third-party people looking at our books. Out of $2 million, is somebody going to say, hey, there's something going on? I don't know the answer to that question. It's something that we can discuss here and decide if that needs to be added.
Mr. Phillips?
In response to that, it's real easy to throw percentages around, but when you start throwing $150,000 or $200,000 out there, that's a number that makes people sit up and take notice.
Other people seeking to be recognized? Mr. Hewitt?
You know, all this stuff before you came in and started talking about this was like Mandarin to me. You have brought it down to Portuguese now, and that's pretty, that's pretty close to Spanish, which I actually understand. So I mean, we're getting that's a big compliment. I mean, so thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Other people seeking to be recognized? If not, thank you very much to the audit committee.
Good job, guys.
The next item on the agenda is the Affiliate Sport Committee. Mr. Smith, 15 minutes.
Thanks, guys. So the Affiliate Sport Committee, for those of you that don't know, Nick made me the chair, and we populated it with Richard Lonstra, Steve Nicola, Aaron Adams, Pat Ford, the chair of the Rhode Island Party, David Demarest. I got that already. And John Phillips. Yeah, sorry. Vice presidential.
It's hard to see.
Hopeful. Yeah, John Phillips. Yeah, sorry. It's a lot of people. We've been holding our meetings every other Sunday, so we're having 2 a month, which is a lot, and we've been able to cover a lot of ground. We wanted to focus on marketing and promotion for the LP brand at all levels of affiliates. We think that that's going to be super helpful, so we put out this LP Everywhere campaign that we rolled out July 21st, wherein party members can send in pictures and videos or earned media of branded activism, and they can win a $1,000 prize. The submissions for that will roll in through November 5th. We also put out a video ad for that. I don't know if everyone on the board has gotten a chance to see the video ad. If not, I haven't pulled it up, but I can play it. It's about 1 minute and 20 seconds. It's not super long, so if you guys want me to play that, I can do that now. Sure. Since we got 15 minutes anyways. Hey Robert, can you help me real quick?
Litigation agrees. Yeah, sorry.
Stretch it over to the right hand side.
Oh, yes, it's 2 screens.
It's a 1.5-minute video with 5 minutes of setup.
I had it already up and open, but I just didn't get to get it set up.
Sorry.
It may not load, I don't know.
It's not on YouTube at all, it's just Facebook?
No, it's on YouTube as well. You have a YouTube as well. Don't know if I can link you.
All you have to do is get pictures, videos, or earned media with images of your affiliate
approved this year.
Submissions will be posted on the social media website. This could be anything from going to the Price is Right with your affiliate, all wearing LP shirts, shout out to Chrissy in Ohio, all the way to doing park cleanups or handing out sandwiches to the homeless, as long as you're proudly showing off your LP branding. That's not the best part, though. The best part is that the amazing folks on ASC have fundraised 1,000 whole buckaroos and will be giving it away to the winning affiliate after going through the submissions with a fine-tooth comb. This contest starts now, and submissions will close on November 5th. Remember the 5th of November. So please get those LP hats, shirts, belts, backpacks, whatever you wish together, and get out there and do some awesome street activism with a cell phone camera, and start sending us those submissions to lpeverywhere@lp.org. Once again, that is lpeverywhere@lp.org. I look forward to seeing all of your beautiful submissions. Thank you guys so much. So I swear that is all in HD, but you don't see it up there at all. So that has reached about 20,000 people just from the current post off from my at-large page. It was also shared by LP National directly from the page, and I think it got another 4,000 or 5,000 views there. And we've already started getting submissions for it through the email.
Submissions, yes.
Yeah. Is that what did I say?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're getting submissions already, and people are really, really amped up about it. There's been about 200 shares just off of my Facebook of the ad, so I'm fairly certain that a large majority of the affiliates are seeing that video and understand that that's a contest. I can take some questions about it if you like.
Dr. Lard,
Yes, first of all, Mr. Smith, thank you. I think that's really, really nice. Stupid question, but I'll ask it. This information, is it also flowing through the people at LPHQ who have responsibility for putting together LP News and other publications? Because I would think that this is something that they're getting this for free, they're getting this easily. This is something we want to be able to give them.
Yes, sir. And thank you very much. So yeah, we actually we had on not the last call we had, but the call before, we had Mr. Fishman on the call, and he's told me that we could possibly send this out with an LP email to let more people know about the competition, because getting activists out doing activism is something that's important to this party. And so yeah, he was on board as soon as we told him. And the idea was Erin Adams. She was the one that laid the foundation for the idea. We all had some other little tweaks that we came up with, and then Christian Malazarte put the video together. He's very, very amazing at video, and he seems to not want you to pay him to do those, even though we probably should at some point if he did more stuff for the party.
As a general comment, whenever I see any libertarian organization doing anything productive, I want them to record it and make sure LPHQ, their state party, gets it as well. So it sounds like you've got a very nice stream of information. I just wanted to be sure that our people at LPHQ
yeah, they were aware of
seeing
it.
Okay.
And I talked to the social media managers as well. They would be interested in, if we get a file from a small affiliate in North Dakota or something that went out and did something wonderful with LP branding on, that we would get that up on the social media as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
Ms. Van Horn?
On the contest side, what's the criteria for people to be selected for the winning?
So,
And, wait a minute, I have more questions. And how is it, do the people on the committee choose if that is the case? How do you make sure that there's not favoritism like your affiliate, or I'm not saying you guys, but that somebody's favorite affiliate doesn't get selected or something? How would we know that there's good criteria for selecting that and that it'd be fair and unbiased?
Sure, absolutely. And we're going to say this in the email that will go out to actual members. So the ASC will be whittling down submissions here and there. And I trust everybody on my team to not be biased. I really do. I think it's a really great team.
Well, I understand, but I'm saying
Sure.
perception out
We're
there.
gonna whittle it down to probably 10 or 15 of the best after submissions close, and we're gonna open it for a vote through members and
Pay to play, right?
Huh?
Pay to play, right?
We could talk about that. And the great thing about the $1,000 is that we didn't ask for it from the LNC affiliate support budget. Erin Adams actually went out and fundraised that money on her own. The LSLA donated $500 of it, and the other $500 is from an anonymous donor currently. So. So it will be one IP address per vote, so we know that people are only voting once as well. So.
When it gets to the member voting part, you mean like?
Yeah, so when we whittle it down to 10 or 15 of the best activism events with the most media attention or pictures or whatever it is, you know, creativeness, then we'll be able to have those voted on and whittle it down further until we get our winner.
I have Ms. Harlos, then Mr. Fishman, and then Mr. Phillips.
I just have a correction with what you just said.
Correction, okay, go ahead.
We actually was two $500 donors, and the LSLA is giving us $200 to help offset.
Oh, costs. That's what it was. Okay.
Staff costs.
And the donors were both, the donors both wanted to remain anonymous.
Right.
Ms. Harlos?
Okay, several concerns. First of all, at your meetings, I hadn't seen those advertises. Are those transparent meetings?
They are.
Where people
They
can-
are public, and I actually, when we first started meeting, I put that link on the LNC.
Okay. You might want to remind people, like when it's coming up, because I probably, I can't get enough of meetings. And county affiliates are eligible, or is it just state parties?
It's all officially recognized, state, county, local, parish, any of the affiliates can win.
Okay. And I think what Dr. Lark was asking for photographs too and things that could possibly go in LP News. Because I noticed you said cell phone things, those will not be able to be used. So if people were thinking of getting it to LP News, it has to be a real camera?
Yeah, some of us have brand new Samsungs that actually have 16 megapixel cameras on them. So I don't know where you're at.
I've got a brand new iPhone, I was told that wasn't sufficient. But the second to last thing, have you considered maybe when you're posting these for voting, or at least for posterity, that you're going to create an LPDA page for it, so that all of these will be preserved
We can do
for
that.
history?
I have no problem with that. You know what? I'm a big fan of the.
Yeah.
the
And that way, even the ones
documenting our
that don't
historical
get
stuff.
whittled down, at least they'll be preserved somewhere.
Sure.
You know. And then lastly, with the voting, with the IP address, I mean, you're dealing with libertarians. One IP, that's not going to stop anybody. They're just going to get on tour.
I think Daniel was going to actually speak to that. So.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Fishman and then Ms. Metz.
In particular, we envision this being a usage of the new member site, so that there actually be login required by members, one member, one vote. We don't want it to be open to the general public, and so validating membership is part of what the member site would do, and so I appreciate Mr. Smith setting out this early challenge for us.
Yeah, well, it's good. I mean, this contest still has the opportunity to evolve in all different aspects because the submissions don't even end until November 5th. And then the voting will start taking place. So we still have a long time to get all that stuff ironed out, but it's getting people interested in going out and doing activism in their communities currently. So,
Ms. Metz and then Mr. Hewitt.
Since it's already been said on live broadcast that we had donations coming from LSLA and an anonymous donor, I'm very concerned about FEC compliance.
Sure.
With that.
Yeah, and so I think that those, I believe that those contributions will have to be reported by whoever wins. I think is that how
If,
so
if we're directing where the money goes,
no, not through the LNC at all.
I recommend you speak with the treasurer and our FEC consultant, because if our committee is in charge of where those monies go.
John Phillips.
We actually have the information on that. The people just didn't want their names released to the public. So we can put it. We can give the donation information if it is required. That's it. That's not a problem.
They just didn't want it like public. Like, I mean, anybody can look up any.
Pretty public.
Yeah,
but
they didn't want us to release it with a Facebook ad.
If it's written as a $500 donation to the party, it's a $500 donation.
One at a time. Thank you.
And can the LSLA give us money? I don't think they're a federally qualified entity.
Yes, because we rent booths with them, remember?
They're not giving us money. They're not giving us money.
I cannot remember if the LSLA is FEC filing or not.
No.
I really don't remember.
They're not when I was trying.
Okay, so the LSLA can promote LSLA activities, which they do in cooperation with the Affiliate Support Committee, and spend those funds that way. And that's probably a really good way to handle that particular part of it.
Sure.
Mr. Hewitt.
When I was watching that, I was looking at it, and I was thinking about the end of America's Funniest Home Videos, where they were going for all these things. And we might have this morph into a first, second, and third place with the top three or something.
Sure.
So, no, it looks like it has the potential for a whole lot.
Well, we've talked about several other things, some T-shirts here and there and stuff like that as well. like I said, that can all evolve, but the good thing is we're getting submissions already. People are already getting involved in their community and taking pictures for us that we can post on the newsletter or, on social media and such, so.
Mr. Longstreth now, and then we'll come back to Mr. Phillips.
The other piece about this is that hashtag LP everywhere. It is a hashtag. It is something that we would ideally like to see starting to trend. Yes, that's where submissions come from, but the idea is to, on social media platforms, also get people talking about how the LP is everywhere. And so there's a little bit of, in my opinion, genius behind the hashtag itself, but I came up with that hashtag. But the idea, right? But the idea is that we want people to really show that we are everywhere. We're not fringe. We're out there in the communities. We're getting involved with people. Our branding's out there and that sort of thing. So in the first week, it's not quite trending as far as that on social media yet. But the hope is that the longer this goes on, with such a long time frame, that people will start submitting their things directly to Twitter. Affiliates will, and they'll also tag it directly in those posts as LP everywhere, and that we build some momentum around that hashtag that currently I believe only fringe Lincoln Park fanatics are using. So we want to take that back and fully own it as part of the Libertarian Party. So.
Yeah, it's perfect because, if we have one weekend where we have 12 affiliates across the country go out and do some kind of activism, and they all post pictures to their personal profiles, their affiliate profiles, with the hashtag LP everywhere, then we got LP everywhere's trending. It's showing a side of the party that the media doesn't typically see, our activist side, which this party was built on the backs of some of the hardest working activists in the country. So,
if I may add, just to further illustrate that point, imagine, if you will, all the trash cleanup and all the things that media we got from that, if all of those had LP everywhere tagged to it. And that's kind of where the goal is and that sort of thing, and that we can continue to build on. And then it is a hashtag that lasts us throughout, not just this event, but kicks off something much bigger that we can use long term.
Time, Mr. Chairman.
Time has expired. I had Mr. Phillips and Ms. Van Horn on deck. Is there a request to extend?
Move to extend by 5 minutes.
Objection.
There's a motion and objection. All in favor of extending for 5 minutes, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 3, 4, 5, 6. We are not extended as not 2/3. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next item is Convention Oversight Committee for 30 minutes. And if there's not, I think we might take a recess after the Convention Oversight Committee. I know it's not scheduled for another hour after that, but every couple hours seems pretty good to me.
That's good thinking.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Molman's getting some things.
Mr. Molman's taking care of it. Mr. Hayes is going to present.
Now, I believe my members of the committee want to handle our recommendation first. Is that right, Mr.
No,
Jones?
go ahead and tag it in at the end,
Okay, all right.
because it'll be time consuming. I think Bishop's
I
giving a
can.
presentation.
Where's Bishop?
He's fine.
He's there.
Richard, is the hashtag if LP everywhere is taken, is the LP I'm right behind you taken by place?
I do it.
Like a picture here.
What you want to do?
Taken out here.
You know it'll be everywhere.
No. No, I'm wondering what's the hashtag.
Wait, we're plotting the plan.
Totally on my back.
Yeah, we're talking on your back. You realize
You need to put LP everywhere on his service stuff.
What time do we go till 6?
things get scheduled on Facebook. They get scheduled 24 hours. Right.
So anyway, on behalf of the Convention Oversight Committee, we'd like to welcome you to the hotel where we're going to be hosting the 2020 convention.
You want this up first, right?
No.
Okay, no, okay.
No, let people come in.
Don't look
Okay.
I just,
You tell me what you want.
let's go through that. Like, we just get there. That just kind of covers our scope, what, and bylaws, et cetera. That's our attendance. So,
I'm working on it. I know.
Come on, Dad.
all right, so One thing about the
You
convention,
guys are such a cute couple.
and something that's been a trend for the last really 3 conventions, is I think we've learned that the earlier you get started with your convention before the convention date, the more time people have to plan, the better your attendance is going to be. If you notice, our total solds and whatnot for 2014, there were 434 packages sold. 2016 it was 906, and off year in New Orleans was 841. With 10 months before, we already have 164 packages that have been sold, of which most are gold. We have almost twice as many of the welcoming committees, which are basically a lot more profitable. It's a larger donation it covers much more than our basic cost. Mr. Mullen?
Do you care about the revenue?
Yeah, actually, we want that. So earlier today, Ms. Mattson was making a motion that sounded like it was asking to a large extent for this. This is something that Robert provides us, generally weekly, unless there's not a lot of movement. But I think so that's letting us know what the convention's brought in. Part of the issue that we have with this is because of the way things are booked. If that's the way how things have to be done because of GAAP or whatever, that's only accounting for about $86,000 of the money that we, as a convention oversight committee, has brought in. So we'd at least like to have it recognized that this money was brought in by the convention for convention type things like the theme contest. And if there's some shortage at the end, or it makes it seem like, oh, we haven't paid the bill, it's because the money's been used elsewhere, but that money is really kind of owed to the party. All right, so if you see, we've got $87,000 in basically packages. We've also got some of the booths that we sold in there as well. Then there's money that's been donated to the convention app, theme contest. So we're probably somewhere over 25,000. Okay, over 125,000 bucks. And then we had recently we had somebody maxed out and did everything that you possibly could do on a particular order for them. It was nice. They did welcoming committee, all the add-ons, a 3% offset for the credit cards, and a lifetime membership, and so it was really nice. And he made me run for our POTUS nomination. So that's all of that. All right, scroll that up.
You care about
So,
the old stuff?
that's a little comparison. So if you look at that's 2018 as of 12/6, we're already past that because we started way earlier. And then you look at 2016, which was also a good year. So these are the two top years. In December, we only had like 14 ranks. So we are way, way, way ahead of where we've been in the past. Okay, keep going.
You care
We're not that worried about that stuff.
Okay.
Well, actually, let's pull 2010 just for comparison. So 2014, we are very close to the total revenue, including fundraising, from the 2010 convention already with 10 months to go. In 2010, there was it was up about 172,000, so that's not that far away. So we're on a good pace. All right, so some of our speakers, Ken, if you want to actually go to the speaker page, and so we actually decided about 4 weeks ago who our what the keynote was going to be, and then there was a little thing that happened before we had actually spoken to them, but we still reached out to them. They're definitely on board. This person had said something that some members didn't like, and as a committee we talked about it, and we don't feel like everybody has to agree on every single thing, and we need to have a discussion, and frankly there'll probably be a debate about this with this particular member, and technology's not loving us.
It happens. Sorry.
Wait, so you just need to get to the
I'm working on it.
You're not swearing enough to make it work well.
I'm working on it. I'm trying to think of all like fancy and like ta-da.
Yeah,
And, the internet's a little bit slow, so it's more like a ta-da. Ta-da. Are you on the page?
No, just
give it over there. Hang on.
Get out of here.
It's coming.
Oh, there we go. All right, so
The interwebs are slow here.
So we used to have like some old white guy that was on the top of the banner.
Now he's very white now.
Very, very white guy.
He was really, this guy was retired. Sorry, Maj Touré is going to be the keynote speaker at the 2020 convention. You know, it was like really we decided that a week before. There was a little thing that Maj said that some people didn't like. I talked to Maj on the phone, and Maj said, you know, we had a conversation. You know, just because some people disagree on one thing does not mean that we're not still family. And Maj is very committed to helping the party get more members, make inroads within the African American community. He thinks it's, and I totally agree with him, it's right. It's for libertarians to make connections and make relationships. You know, there's a great entrepreneurial spirit that's inside of the African American community. They aren't too crazy about a lot of regulations and stuff, so it's just a place that we can make a lot of inroads. And Maj is very, like I said, he wants to help us raise our memberships, financial, etc., registrations. So he's going to be our keynote in 2020, and we'll probably have a debate over that particular issue. He said something that is probably a fairly somewhat prevalent attitude within the African American community relative to some immigrants. So we plan on having a debate about that, and then he will also be the keynote. And I think one of the things he's just going to talk about is, we don't have to agree on everything. We're libertarians, we're a family, we're going to work together on those things that we agree on, and see what we can do to get more liberty for everybody. Okay, so Ken, let's get back to the report.
Next. That's not the right thing. Hold on. Too many windows open on this laptop, too. There we go.
Okay, let's look at the rooms. So, who all has, for the convention next year, booked your room yet? So we would encourage you to book your rooms. You can get down, where's that?
That's not the right place.
Well, no, that blue thing.
I'm working on it. There it is.
So we originally started with our contract, 1,595 rooms. That was the original contract. We already got the contract up to 1,922 rooms. If you notice the distribution, these are what's already been picked up so far. We've already this isn't even correct. The last time I checked, we were at 790 rooms that have been picked up. So this was like last Saturday. But this is the peak night, and this is also looking like another peak, but it's a very shallow curve. This is the day we're encouraging everybody to come in. This is registration day, so we call it day 0. This is the first act, and that's where we're going to have the welcome reception. This is the first day of convention, second day of convention, third day of convention, and then Memorial Day. So there's not a lot of drop off on the shoulder rooms, and we're probably going to do another addendum and add more rooms. Mr. Redpath.
How do you, with the world watching online, tell us how to book our rooms? Mr.
How to book
Hayes.
your rooms?
Go to LNC2020.com.
Did I not put a link in
Here.
there?
There's also
Yeah, you go to LNC2020.com. That's the website. Just click on where, and that'll get you to the other things. See the where up there?
And there we are. And hotel booking link.
So it's a hotel booking link. So you can get to it from there. Anybody that's interested in the specialty suites, which we're going to talk about in a second, at this point you can email me. We're trying to get the staff to get that somewhat automated and get some donation pages set up so that that can be done without having someone in the middle. But we are well ahead. This is already, 790 rooms is 41% of the room block already. Of what we've expanded from what was there, we already expanded, I should say. So we're way ahead. It's probably still like over 35% if we add all the rooms that we think we might need, so we don't get any problems here with these shoulder days. Now, this is why I encourage everybody to book your room as soon as possible. This is a very nice, very popular hotel in a very hot area, possibly the hottest destination in the United States, in Austin. We have an incredible rate. This hotel normally, its rack rate is $509. Our rate, as you may have saw earlier, is $139 a night. So it's extremely low. To meet a rate similar to that at a hotel, you might need to be at a Motel 6, about 6 miles away, literally. So I encourage all of you to book your rooms now. It's not going to cost anything at this point. You just need a credit or debit card that expires after the convention date. And if you have a problem with that, there's some other ways, and I got some hoops that I can jump through with the hotel staff to where you can get your room reserved. What that does is it gives us a better idea of how many people are going to actually be at the hotel, and it makes it easier for us to add rooms with less risk. Because, you know, we have to pay for those rooms if we don't hit it. We currently have a 75% attrition, so we need to do 75% of 1922, but that number's probably going to go up. But we can relax a little more as more people do that. So I encourage everybody to book your rooms. All right, suites and specialty
We
rooms.
skipped over a bunch of stuff out of
I did?
Yep.
What one?
that.
Well, oh,
I know, because thing's crazy. You want to talk about that?
sure, we can talk.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so convention app, who's downloaded the convention app? All right, so most of the people in here.
Just me.
So there's somewhere 55-ish or so people that have actually put the app on their phone. There's a little bit of stuff on there. It's growing there all the time, you know. We try and chain our tech guy to the chair to make sure it gets done, but you know, he's only doing 16 things. But it's getting there. We got a lot of time before the convention, and there's going to be more and more content populated on there. That's going to potentially help people keep track of their schedules, know you know, where their caucuses are going to be, which is an important thing that's often been neglected in the past. You know, where a lot of you regional reps get elected at. So we're looking to get that a little more organized and do that with the app. One thing that we're not going to do going forward, we talked about it last time, we decided to not do a convention book since we have the app. Now what we are going to do is print out all of the bylaws mandated reports that need to be given to the delegates. So they'll have the bylaws committee report, the platform committee report, the audit committee report, and then we will have those distributed at the credentialing desk to all the delegates.
Because we have to.
Which might not have ever been done before. So anyway, so the CRM and credentialing and registration, Ken, you want to maybe talk about that since that's more?
Oh, sure. Oh, let me get up. So, as has been mentioned several times, this meeting, the convention's been bringing in revenue. Some of that revenue has been being used for doing things. And in theory, that takes a hold. In talking with Daniel,
That's not.
no, there's
We
three
did because the right hand needs to talk to the left hand. Go on.
There are 3 wins in this. This is win number 1. By using tools that the LP already has and is already paying for, it means that it's less of a hole that the body needs to pay back to the convention. If we were to use this, if we were to develop it ourselves, if we were to build a tool to do this, it would have a real cost.
Over how much?
Depends on how crazy you go with it, but somewhere between $30,000 and $300,000, roughly. So the point being that if we use the CRM, which is a tool that is already built, and we've already kind of discussed and figured out how that basically would work through one of my infamous whiteboarding sessions, I think for this body, the main concern expressed this morning is the amount of money that has to go back to the convention is not necessarily quite so great, which is great for you. The other piece of this, or another piece, is about staff time, right? There's been conversations about the extreme amount of staff time required to do all this work on the back end, the credentialing, the going through line, assembling the badges, doing all of that stuff. Our goal is to make it that this will streamline that process because we'll already have the information, we'll have it in the CRM. The necessity to go cross-check databases for people will be narrowed to very, very little because they're already in the database. So our goal is to save staff time, which again is costs, saving money. The other part of this is that the goal is to make it easier on our delegates, right? Because at the end of the day, our delegates are the reason we're here. And so anything that we can do to make it easier on our delegates is a win for all of us as an organization. So I see this as a triple win. The IT committee, which are you is doing? Are you doing it? Mr. Merced will be talking about later. Has also been looking at this, and there'll be, I assume, a little more about that in there-ish. And then we've been trying to get all the pieces together. Ben Bachrach, who's the guy who built the current credentialing system, is on board. Basically, everyone we've talked to within the committees all seem to be on board. Andy Burns, who is basically the master of the CRM, is on board. It's all fitting together nicely. So we're very excited about this. We think it's going to make everything better for everybody. It's like just win, 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 and yay. And of course, being an IT guy, my main thing will be making sure that we have a fallback plan in case everything falls apart horribly. That's, it's IT. So.
But one of the things, so the credentialing committee is a co-equal committee to the LNC. It answers to the delegates. The only control that the LNC has over that committee is they appoint the members of the credentialing committee for the delegates of the convention. But that said, the credentialing committee is basically, to a large extent, autonomous from the LNC. Obviously, we need to work together, but they're the ones that are going to credential, and one of the things that's made me crazy in the past is the credentials that we hand people after credentials is done with them is a little ribbon that says delegate, and they safety pin it to the, if they don't have a package, they safety pin it to their code or whatever. And so this is about getting the credentialing committee's information as soon as they have verified those delegates to where it's available for staff, so then that person can then go over to staff, and maybe, if they don't have a package or whatever, staff can talk to them about the benefits of upgrading their package or getting a package. But if not, staff can print out their professional looking credentials that lets it know that they're a delegate only, and they are authorized to be on the floor voting. But that information for people that have gold packages, etc., that their badges will be slightly different, but it'll also indicate if they're just an attendee, with a gold package, or if they're an attendee and a delegate. And so it gets it all integrated, and those can get printed on one place. We don't have to lay them all out, and which is a big crunch of staff time, and it can be done on site or corrected or whatever, and then we can print it on the spot. Anyway, all right, Ken, ready to
Yep. Let's see what else I skipped. We skipped over the speakers.
people go on the website, look at the speakers. It's in the report. So
Okay.
and yeah.
Salon
So
rentals,
like tweets.
Oh, okay.
Apparently.
Totally should have made this a PowerPoint. Go ahead.
All right, so we still have 3 presidential suites available, which some of us toured yesterday. There are 2 of the 3 one-bedroom hospitality suites, which are on this floor, that have a pretty nice open space, but 700 square feet, along with a bedroom attached to it that's great for entertaining. 1-bedroom executive suites, we have 9 of those. We have 15, what's known as a king view. It's basically the only guaranteed king room that we have. All the other ones are king requests. But they're on a higher floor, so less noise. They face the lake, a little better view. But the thing that made me want one is that executive lounge across the way, which is only a floor up from the convention hall. They do a hot breakfast in the morning, hors d'oeuvres in the evening, and there's drinks there all the time. Some nice little nooks where you can sit and relax and have a conversation. So,
which, Daniel, by the way, it's important to note that that's good for you and a guest.
Yes,
Right.
yes, we can win.
Each day.
So those are 13. Those king views are $13.75 relative to the typical. This is basically our cost with taxes and fees for a room, and so the executive suites are $2,500, $6,000 for the hospitality suites, $10,000 for the presidential.
Is that for how many?
So it's going to be there'll be check-in on Wednesday, May 20th. Check out on like 11 o'clock on Tuesday, May 26th.
Oh, so that's a decent deal.
Yeah.
It's the red pack.
10 months until we're all here together as one big happy family. But I'm not aware of a tour this weekend. I would love to see where this is going.
Yeah.
You know what? So here's the thing.
You guys did it yesterday.
The rooms, we did one yesterday.
All right.
With but if people want to look at like the convention space,
Okay.
I can certainly take y'all around and show you the convention space
Yeah.
that we have. I can't show you like the specialty rooms,
No.
though they're supposed to get with us and maybe try and show us one of the
Okay.
hospitality suites.
I couldn't have made it anyway, but my bad. I couldn't have made it anyway.
Yes, Ms. Billiard?
I was gonna say, Robert is checking on the ones that we were not able to see yesterday.
Yes.
We don't know if that's gonna be possible.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the King View Murals, when you're allowed to be at that price of $1,300 and change, that's less than $400 more than a standard king room, and for the entire time, $1,400 inclusive.
For a nice room.
Very little amount more, and you're gonna get that lounge and all of those perks and beverages and food and a quiet place to kind of decompress. It's absolutely worth the price.
They have lots of bagels in there.
The other committee members, remind me, are we still doing the people who get a welcoming committee get first priority on this?
Yes.
So, another reason to buy a welcoming committee, just saying.
Ms. Roberts.
So a question on these. So that's not automated yet on any of those specialties?
No, they need to write it.
Okay, and do they have to pay now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
that's something that, yes,
different.
thanks for asking that question, because that might have been a little unclear
Okay.
in the email that went out. So for the regular rooms through the hotel, you just need a credit card
Right,
and you
but
reserve
these you
that.
have to pay.
But so this is actually, no, you don't pay. It's a donation to the party. This is something that the party has, and you make a donation, and we give you this for being so kind. So, yeah, but that's something that needs to be done, and it's a first come, first served basis. You know, like if somebody says, hey, I'm doing it tomorrow, you know, I'm sure they'd be waiting for that, but it generally needs to be paid on the spot.
I have another word. This is not a pet-friendly hotel, or is it a pet-friendly?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if you could bring your dog.
So down on, in the OP, they've got like a pet-friendly area there. It's semi-pet, but not through the whole hotel. They gotta be like service dogs.
Yeah, service dogs, obviously. Okay.
Ms. Redback.
This question is probably not within your committee's bailiwick, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And that is, in convention in 2018, the agenda for the convention was altered. In the bylaws, it was altered, so now the presidential ticket comes last. And I was just wondering if anybody had called C-SPAN just to get their feedback on this.
We have not called C-SPAN, but that's something that we're definitely concerned about in this month.
As a correction, resolutions are still last.
Yeah, we never.
Well, I'll be staying for that.
Yeah. The COC is very concerned about the change made in the timing. And one of the things that we've been talking about is moving a lot of the fluff, like speakers, to just before resolutions.
Well, or
maybe
they're
we'll
going
get
to
to them.
be floating.
Let's face it. If C-SPAN were to communicate with us and say, hey, guys, look, come on. If you want us to, we need some certainty as to when this is all going to come off. I mean,
Memorial Day.
But
No, I'm serious. Memorial Day. It's scheduled for day 4. Day 4 is.
Okay. Yes. Okay. But what if they say that, you know? I mean, well, first of all, I mean.
You can't overrule the delegates.
The delegates.
Yeah,
My point is this: is that I can see a move to suspend the rules. You know, I mean, that would be in order. And if C-SPAN were to say, look, if you want us to cover this, it's got to be, you know, 9 a.m. local time on Sunday. You know, I mean.
Not a holiday.
Well, it's always been on Sunday in the
time and a
past.
half.
I mean, if they were to say that, I mean, we could be to a point where it might take us. I would think that a suspension of the rules would pass if it meant being on C-SPAN or not.
How much money do you want
No,
to bet
Mr.
the
Redpath,
delegates do what you want?
Here's the deal.
Because I'll take the under.
Mr. Redpath, the point is that as the committee, we do not have the authority
No, we can't
to make any changes. So
I know, and I'm partially just venting right now, but.
Oh, we do that on a bi-weekly basis.
Mr. Redpath, we have been discussing the same matter for like 9 months now.
Yeah, every other week for 9 months. And we are working with what the delegates have given us. That is our mandate. And so I will say that your concern has not been, or has been brought up multiple times within the committee. And we just have to go roll with it, and we'll see what happens. And I can tell you that the app has relatively easy ability to rearrange schedules if the delegates were so inclined.
Ms. Mattson.
Thank
I just want to emphasize what he briefly mentioned, that there are schedule squeezes being made elsewhere. It's like the awards presentation, we've done that
Ms.
on the
Mattson?
full convention floor.
Ms. Mattson.
Ms.
Mattson.
Big-
Okay, a little louder.
I thought you were going down
no.
instead of up.
I should break her eyes.
Yes, like, shh. But, you know, maybe we're talking about maybe moving the awards presentations to one of the luncheons and just things to keep it, maximize the time on the convention floor to get through the other business, so we can, you know,
Yeah, I
there are
mean,
fewer delays in getting to that.
The reception, the gala, or the after party, sometime like that. All right, so
Thank you for indulging me.
absolutely. Vendor booths. So we have 3 levels of vendor booths at the present time. They're on the floor below, so the main hall is going to be right above that. These are going to be the prime tables. They are $1,000 a piece. Then we've got some B tables. Those are $750, and then there's a lot of $500 tables. We had some staff stuff over here. We're probably going to move that somewhere else, and that's a whole other thing because we're worried about lines on the first day and getting the way stuff. So we still have a lot of stuff available. If you're looking for that table for that special person in your life, you can get it now. So
I would take a second table if anybody wants to get us another one. Just
So anyway,
That's the list of
Okay, if I go any further, you're gonna see the 15 sites.
it's okay.
Okay, I just
Get
thought
ready.
you'd put more building.
We
that's
we
all.
have it in our,
I just thought you
So,
wanted
so,
more building.
so relative to the sites, some of these are really kind of on the bubble. There's always a chance at some point we look at something else or get another piece of information
as long
and
as
pull
it's
something off the edge.
Hold on.
But we are basically down to about 15 sites.
I'm working on getting it bigger, so y'all can read it.
At the Hilton where Reagan shot.
So we've got a few California options that are in there. Colorado, some stuff on the West Coast. We've got a DC option there, which actually prompted discussions about possibly doing 2-site deals with Hilton and another hotel chain is looking at that.
Or you just have it at the White House.
This JW Marriott in Indianapolis, that's a very nice hotel. It's very, very similar to this one. It's got some differences, but generally fairly similar. Baltimore's given us some good concessions and whatnot. I'm going to be going out and looking at some hotels in Reno, and Potawatomi is in.
Potawatomi.
A lot of Pata is in
outside Milwaukee.
somewhere around Milwaukee, right? So, and like I said, there's some things that they're not on there, but we may if something comes up, we may pull them off the ad sheet for a second. But generally, we're down to about 15, but a lot of those are kind of not as. It's really more like 10. So,
We're getting there.
come the next meeting, in the budget meeting, it's going to, we're going to expect you guys to make a decision. So we're going to have all the information lined up for you. And-
Daniel, you forgot one
Yeah.
thing.
Is it too late
All
to
right,
suggest?
You
Mr.
skipped
Hewitt?
Yes.
oh, yeah,
Whoa. Okay. I run the meeting.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Goldstein, then Mr. Hewitt.
You skipped
No,
one thing,
no,
Daniel.
no, sir, we're out of time.
Orders of the day.
Well,
Move we extend by 15 minutes.
There's still a motion.
Objection.
objective.
There's a motion coming.
We have
can
one
you
item
say
left.
5?
I could say 10, because we have a motion we're gonna make.
Is there objection to extending for 10? You're lucky.
Okay.
Mr. Goldstein, then Mr. Hewitt.
Well, I've got just one thing to add right now. You skipped over the salon rental. So for those caucuses and presidential campaigns or chair campaigns, we have, for rent, now we've decided on the price, we have 3 1,900 square foot salon suites that are on one cap of the convention hall, and they are available for rent by the hour at $200 an hour with 2-hour minimum, $1,500 a day, or if you want it for the whole shebang, $4,000. And those are available for rental through either me or Daniel, or me or whatever. There will be smaller meeting rooms like this that will be available at a price to be announced at some point in the near future for smaller workshops or whatever you guys want to do.
Mr. Hewitt, then Dr. Lark.
just a quick one, Reno looks good, it's the biggest little city in the world, we could have the biggest little party in the biggest little city.
With 20 flights a day.
Dr. Lark.
I'm sorry, personally to Mr. Goldstein's
Yes.
point. I apologize, perhaps this has been addressed elsewhere. Regional caucuses,
We are handling that, and they will be either in those salons
Or there'll be a charge?
Yes.
There
No,
will-
no charge for regional.
If anybody wants to do a tour after this meeting, whenever you all get done arguing over commas, we can, we'll go.
You have to share all space.
Yeah, because there's a lot of space. We will not have the sillinesses we've had in the past with the caucus stuff, which is wonderful.
If there's not objection, Mr. Nana and Ms. Bilyeu, are you just stretching?
Oh, I was gonna say something that's no longer appropriate.
Okay.
Now we want to hear it.
Mr. Nana, go ahead. How do you follow that?
We're all adults, come on.
No, my question, well, actually, it's a question for you. So you can guarantee that each regional caucus will have their own room to do
Yes.
this in?
Yes.
Probably,
That's all I wanna know.
With chairs and tables even.
Chairs
Unless
and-
for some reason the convention is way crazy and like we sell like a bazillion salons.
I mean, I'm okay with
No,
no chairs
no,
and
no,
tables.
that takes precedence.
Wait a second, so, a lot of crosstalk. Dr. Lark?
Mr. Chairman, since it is traditional for the LNC to hold its, what we anticipate will be the final meeting of the term, usually the day before, should we go ahead and formalize that now?
I think it's already.
Sorry, wait a second. Are we talking about the meeting in the spring of 2020?
No, we're talking about the one, usually that takes place.
The
Thursday
one that,
afternoon.
yeah, the half day.
That's
or
right. And
one day.
so do we want to find, do we want to?
It's there, Jim.
It's already, they've got it on the schedule. We just haven't officially said we're gonna do it.
Which day should we do that?
Thursday afternoon.
May 21.
Should we do it now? Go ahead and set the time.
It's in order, if we have the time.
Well, usually those need to be shuffled around the bylaws and platforms so they don't overlap. 'Cause you
Well,
got
actually, maybe
members
they
on
should shuffle
several.
around us.
Especially
No,
since they don't
I
exist.
mean, do we
Yeah,
want,
just
because
the three
some people may
negotiate
be
with
coming
each
in at
other.
a particular time, so it would be actually helpful to know when we are, or at least
Yeah.
a likely start time.
I will get on the handy LNC 2020 app and tell you when we have currently slated the LNC. Not that you're required to go by it by any means, just what I put in here. But I'm really just promoting the app.
Yes,
Really
I
what
see
I'm
that.
doing here.
You're doing an excellent job.
Thursday, there's nothing on Friday.
I guess it'd be Thursday.
Oh, it is supposed to be Thursday. Why is
Yes.
it not there?
I'll guess 3 p.m.
Unfortunately, I don't have Thursday in the app yet. It's a work in progress.
You're
It is
selling it.
continuing to get more data.
That was pretty anticlimactic.
So
Sorry.
Thursday, what day?
May 21st. No, yes. Day 0.
Thursday, May 21st. At what time?
3 p.m.
At 3 p.m. That is the request. Is that a motion? Did I hear a
Yeah,
motion?
that's a motion.
Okay. Is there a second for that motion? Point of information, Mr. Hagan?
I do see it on the app, says LNC meeting 4 p.m.
No, look at that. I was gonna say, I thought it was, but it didn't show up on my phone.
What time
Till 6
does,
p.m.
point of inquiry, there's a reception,
have
what
to
time,
stop.
what time does the reception start? On Thursday.
7 or 8.
It's probably 7, which
Four?
probably means 4 is foolish.
No,
That's a very short meeting. And
They usually are.
not always that good at very short meetings. Dr. Lark?
Actually, Mr.
Last 3
Chairman,
times we have.
given that it is a presidential nominating convention, given what may be happening in the world at the time, it might actually be better for us to schedule it at 3 o'clock rather than 4 o'clock.
That's what I was thinking. So I've heard a motion to schedule the final LNC meeting of this LNC for Thursday, May 21st at 3 p.m. here in Austin, the beautiful JW Marriott. And the second for that? Second. Is there any discussion? Dr. Lark?
Technically, in the minutes, it should not be listed as the final meeting because we've had final meetings after the final meeting. Just simply say the meeting, or a meeting.
Sure.
A pre-convention.
The secretary will do that.
Pre-convention meeting is that.
I did not put final.
Good.
It's a good luck.
Is there any discussion? Any further discussion? Is there any objection to this motion? Hearing neither further discussion nor objection, we'll move on. Mr. Bowen from the gallery was seeking to be recognized if there's no objection.
Yeah, I just had a question. I drove to the last 2 conventions and noted this time that there is no transportation from the airport to the hotel. I don't know if we have in the past done anything with taxi companies or Uber or specials that might reduce costs.
Mr. Kraus, were you going to respond to exactly that?
There is a light rail that comes directly over here.
Okay.
We're
$2 or $2.5?
It's a bus.
It's a bus.
It's a bus, every 15 minutes.
It's pretty light.
It looks like a rail.
I don't know if you've ever done anything about that in the past, because like you said, I drove, I'm just curious.
We have done it in Florida. We had a contract, I think, with a transportation company, so we can do that.
Okay.
The convention committee could do that. Dr. Larkin, Mr. Redpath.
Yes, Super Shuttle is fairly popular in Austin, and I think at the very least, it would be appropriate to approach them to see if they might provide a discount or something like that. It actually, they're trying to build their base. They have a subscriber base, so it might actually be something where they actually have an interest in marketing to us.
How about those little scooters?
Mr. Redpath?
3 minutes left on this item, and I'm dying to hear that motion.
Okay. So this is a recommendation for criteria for POTUS or VP candidates to be included on the LP website. Mr. Goldstein, since this was kind of your baby, did you want to kind of speak to it?
Basically, historically, we've gotten into all kinds of arguments and shoving back and forth come September, October, November of the year before the POTUS nominations about who or what's going to get listed as a presidential or vice presidential candidate on our website and on the convention website and now the app. So we kind of took a jump on this by attempting to create a set of specific criteria for inclusion of those campaigns on, let's just call it any LP platform rather than just the website. And I will read them. They were derived originally from the already approved criteria for the Candidate Support Committee. They are, number one, and this is new, must have filed FEC2 with the Federal Election Commission. Number two, the candidate is a sustaining member of the National Libertarian Party. 3, the candidate is legally qualified to hold the office and must be registered as a Libertarian if their home state has party registration. 4, the candidate must have a functional website and or Facebook page that can be linked from lp.org. 5, the candidate has a professional quality photos, especially a headshot, and at least a 1-minute video with audio of the candidate speaking. 6, the candidate must have a dedicated campaign manager. 7, the candidate must use the word libertarian in his or her campaign materials. And I will move this on behalf of the convention committee.
Is there a second?
I don't think it needs one.
Technically, it doesn't. Well, I know I have a lot. I have Carlos, Phillips, Hagan, Lyons, Redpath. Well, there's a lot of hands, so my guess is...
We got 3 minutes
Would you like to speak to your motion?
I think I spoke to it in my preface. Basically, we go through this every 4 years. There's a lot of argument, and there's been no objective criteria as to who gets listed on the various platforms that we have now, and it goes beyond the website to all the other stuff that we have. So we thought that we would take a jump on it, kind of set some criteria as we move forward so that the various campaigns, as they pop up out of nowhere, or the existing campaigns, will know what they will need to do if and when the LP adds our candidates to these platforms, that they'll know what they have to do in order to be included.
Ms. Harlows?
I'd like to move to amend, to strike number 1.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Second from Mr. Lyons. Would you like to speak to your amendment, Ms. Harlows?
I don't think it'll come up often, but I consider the fact that we are opposed to the FEC to begin with, that if a candidate wants to, and I think it would be foolish of them to do so, but if they want to do a protest where they say they're not going to file, I don't think it's really right for us to require that.
If I could answer that?
Would anyone like to speak against?
Time is up.
Time is expired.
I move to extend 5 minutes, at least because I think there's a technical problem with number 3.
It's a motion to extend for 5. Is there objection?
Can we make it 10?
Yeah, can we make it 10?
I told you.
All right, so motion to extend for 10. Is there an objection to that?
It's inevitable.
I hear no objection to the
I'm not
inevitability.
Mr.
Mr. Goldstein, on the amendment.
Yes, on addressing Mrs. Harlow's amendment, this came up in our committee meeting, and we thought that there is a problem with an in-kind contribution to a non-reporting presidential committee by putting them on the website. If we're wrong on that, then I think we're willing to forego number 1. But if we're right, we don't want to get in trouble with the FEC for promoting the candidacy of somebody who's not filing with the FEC. So that's a question probably for Paula Edwards, I would guess.
It's a combination Paul and Oliver question, but it's probably not a problem.
Okay.
That's what my
We'd
little
still
attorney
like to hear,
tummy
but if
tells
you guys
me.
voted off, then...
Point of
okay.
information.
Yes.
Daryl Perry was listed on our website before, am I correct, without that requirement? I wasn't on the LNC at that time, so I'm not being facetious.
That is correct, as a matter of fact, although it doesn't necessarily answer whether or not that is
Allowed, it's
allowed
just
as a
we've
matter
done
of
it.
law. Ms.
I
Bilyeu?
just want to make sure everybody understands, this is FEC 2.
Yes, the second FEC filing form, the one that I believe is,
Yes, it's not that they have not appointed a treasurer and they're not collecting money. That's not what this is. That would be FEC 1.
FEC 1 is a statement of organization.
okay.
This is the one that it's kind of, well, like he was saying, it sort of covers us as we're in this exchange of services or something of value with this person. And from what I understand from Bob Johnson, this has been required always.
Well, except for Daryl Perry. So, there we are. Other people to speak on the amendment? Ooh, we can move right to a vote on the amendment. So the amendment is to strike item 1 from the original motion that Mr. Goldstein made. I'm going to say that's roll call.
Yes.
And as soon as you're ready to take the roll.
1 second here.
So a yes would be to strike that from the motion, and no would be to leave item 1 in the motion.
Give me 1 second, because I thought I set this up, but I didn't.
Just a point of information, I want to clarify. We are not sure on the legality of this.
I mean, that's a fair statement of fact. What we know is that we didn't require this for Mr. Perry in a previous cycle, and that it wasn't a problem. But we don't know why it wasn't a problem.
We did get caught.
We don't know whether or not
There were objections from.
there is value or not value in having your name listed on our website, because they would have to, in order for it to be a violation, they would have to show that we gave a thing of value. And this whole area of informational transfers there's no good straight answers for you. And frankly, after you talk to Oliver and Paula, still no good straight answers for you. I'm just going to tell you what you're going to get. You're going to get a longer way of what I just said. Probably with maybe a reference to some MUR from something that did happen that's kind of maybe similar. Are you ready to take the roll on the amendment?
I am.
Ms. Bilyeu, is this a question?
Can we sometimes go backwards?
Oh, yeah, I can go backwards.
Okay. For a second, I thought that was germane to the motion.
There you go.
Who wants to be picked last?
All organizations can backslide.
Okay, I'm ready.
Go ahead.
Ms. Van Horn?
I forget which is no and which is yes, but.
Yes is to strike item 1 from the motion.
Then I don't
No
know.
is to keep item 1 in the motion.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Redpath?
I'm sorry, I went out to place a call on another matter pertaining to this. Did we decide on the legality or no?
Nope, we don't know. We're just voting on the amendment.
It was unclear.
Abstain.
1 second. Hold on. This is going backwards. It's tripping me out. Mr. Phillips?
I have to recuse myself from this vote.
Okay, so abstain.
Abstain.
Is your alternate here?
No.
Mr. Nikela?
I vote no.
Mr. Merced?
I vote no.
Ms. Mattson?
No.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Longstreth?
Yes.
Dr. Lark?
No.
Mr. Hewitt?
No.
I will vote yes. Mr. Hagan?
No.
Mr. Goldstein?
No.
Mr. Bishop Henchman?
Nay.
Ms. Bilyeu?
No.
Okay, that is
Smith passed it.
3
Smith
yeses.
passed.
What?
Smith passed.
Oh, duh. Okay, would you like to do
I'll
it?
vote yes.
Okay, you'll vote yes, 1 second here. Thank you. So we have 4 yeses, 10 noes, 2 abstains. Would the chair like to vote?
No, thank you.
All right.
So that failed?
Failed
Okay.
spectacularly.
Well, anything spectacular. All right, so I next had Mr. Phillips on the motion, then
I would like to make a move.
Mr. Hagan, Lyons, and Redpath.
I'd like to make a move to amend number 4 to strike 4.
So the motion is to amend number 4 to strike.
It should, yeah, we'll strike /or.
Are you striking, so
I wanted to say
you're gonna
website and
require them
Facebook.
to be on Facebook?
Oh, that's, yeah, good point. No, never mind.
Are you withdrawing this
I'm
amendment?
withdrawing it.
Okay.
I'm withdrawing it.
And it,
I was trying
it
to
does
retest
sort
it.
of relate back to the question of whether or not you want to participate in this at all.
I was trying to retest.
Mr. Hagan.
My question is on number 3, which may be the same thing that Mr. Redpath was going to bring up. Are there any states that has registration by party but does not allow Libertarian?
Yes, the states in which we are not a recognized party.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So that is a
So the
problem
wording's
that's
wrong?
worded.
No, it just, I would say it should be added as, if one
their
can
home
register
state
libertarian.
allows
That's kind of what we
registration
intended,
as
so.
a-
Yeah.
If the home
Yeah.
state
When it
allows
says-
libertarian registration.
So the amendment should. Yeah, just
Has
whatever Bill wants to
libertarian
put in,
registration
it's
Although-
fine.
I mean, wait, now.
I was half asleep when we were.
I'm just going to bring this up. It's totally out of order for me to do it, but you are excluding people who are ineligible to register to vote.
All right.
Or the eligible president.
Hang on,
Ask Mr. Dennis.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm probably out of order, but can I make a motion to amend or ask someone to make a
You
motion?
can
suggest
ask
it?
somebody.
Maybe we should just say must not be registered as another party other than Libertarian.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to amend, and Mr. Molman's going to read my amendment.
Oh, second. All right. That's kind of out of order. I mean, it is technically just out of order because it was Hagan who raised the.
Yeah, but the wording hadn't been
I
phrased
know.
yet, so.
I know.
Wait, can I move to amend?
Yeah, you're still recognized.
Mr. Molman?
Sorry, Joe. The moment, rather than minutes.
So, I believe the new amendment, it would read, the candidate is legally qualified to hold the office and must not be registered as the member of another party.
A party other than Libertarian.
Mr. Chair. That's pretty much implied by the fact that this is a libertarian party.
Mr. Chair.
Whoa. Motion to amend from Mr. Hagan. Is there a second to it?
Second.
Okay. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
I think we've already discussed it.
Would anyone like to speak against the amendment? Mr. Redpath.
This allows somebody who can be registered libertarian to be registered independent and still be eligible for our nomination.
It does.
Not in some states where independent is a party, so NPA, not a non-party affiliation.
So yes, it does. The answer is yes. That is, I don't
And it
know if
does
that's an
not
argument
violate
for or
bylaws.
against the amendment, but you've made whatever
It's against
argument that
in my
is.
book.
Mr. Lyons.
Mr. Chair, on this item 3, are we also concerned about the person being qualified to get on the ballot in all 50 states?
So
Are we concerned about people that are felons?
Felons can get on the ballot in all 50 states.
Because-
There's no constitutional
There's no
prohibition on
Just can't
felonies.
vote.
Will the states put them on the ballot?
States
Yes,
can
if they don't want to lose in court, they will.
So
They
the,
can't require
the
us to be on the
definition in the
Constitution.
U.S. Constitution is
the-
over the age of 35 and a U.S. citizen.
A natural born U.S. citizen and over the age of 35, and you have to have president, vice president be from separate states.
You know, I think that means anybody born by C-section can't be president.
I've heard that argument, and I'll reference you to some tax protesters. Other people who wish to speak on the amendment.
Brownie point.
Anyone else want to speak for or against the amendment? Hearing no one else speaking for or against the amendment, the amendment is to change item 3 to be the candidate is legally qualified to hold the office and must not be registered as a member of another party. If you're ready with your roll call.
There is an objection. Okay, yes, 1 second. Sorry.
I mean, there's been discussion about it, so it's going to
Yeah.
go to a vote. It's not going to be without objection.
Okay.
I don't.
Well, no, there was Mr. Redpath.
I get a vibe that it's not. If I think it'll work, I try.
Just give me 1 sec. Just clear this out. Do we go backwards this time or forwards?
Up to you.
Forwards is much
You
easier.
should alternate would be my suggestion,
Okay.
Madam Secretary.
All right, Ms. Billy,
Just in voting on the amendment.
Yes, vote to.
Yes.
Mr. Bishop Henchman,
Aye.
Mr. Goldstein,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Hewitt,
Yes.
Dr. Lark,
Aye.
Mr. Longstreth,
Aye.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Ms. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Merced?
Yes.
Mr. Nikela?
Aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Abstain.
Mr. Redpath?
It ain't perfect, but I'll vote yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Van Horn?
Can I pass? Or am I the last?
Well, you
I'm
can't
at the
pass.
very end.
Very brief moment.
Okay, now it's you again.
Yeah, that didn't work so well, does it? I'll just abstain.
Okay.
So I can decide.
And we have 14 yes, 0 no, 2 abstentions. Would the chair like to vote?
I wouldn't like to vote, and I will tell Dr. Lark that I was wrong. Time has expired. We had Mr. Lyons and Mr. Redpath waiting to be recognized. Is there, Mr. Lyons is shaking his head vigorously, saying no, and Mr. Redpath as well. Is there anyone who wishes to extend time on this item? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote on the item as amended, which has the text that's on the screen as the LNC adopting these criteria for candidates who will be listed on the website.
Give me a second here.
And now we're going backwards this time.
Yep.
And this is on the whole thing,
As amended, yes.
Yep.
Clear it out. And Ms. Van Horn?
yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Redpath?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Abstain.
Mr. Nikela?
Vote aye.
Mr. Merced?
Yes.
Ms. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Longstrap?
Yes.
Dr. Lark?
Aye.
Mr. Hewitt?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mr. Goldstein?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop Henchman?
Aye.
Ms. Billieu?
Yes.
So we have 15 yeses and 1 abstention. Would the chair like to vote?
No, thank you.
I'm shocked.
Wow.
I'm totally shocked, you guys.
Good job. So anybody that needs a package, LNCmoney.com.
All right, the next item on the agenda
There's a potty break.
is a recess for 10
Yes.
minutes. So we will be back at 4:27. Need that extra minute one more time.
The YouTube video continues to record, so go square outside.
Yeah, let them have it. They can get just Facebook. They don't have to have it. And that's, you know, anybody can file the FEC too and get a web, or get a Facebook page.
Yes, everything.
There wasn't much arguing about it. So.
Yeah, I don't think.
Greetings, dear boy, how are you?
Well, I'm planes and in hotels, and I got to mow the lawn today, so. Yes.
Website only shows the lives.
I have a flight tomorrow, so it is 2 o'clock's flight, I believe, so. Yeah.
It's sometimes difficult.
I may swing by if I can here. I'll be there tonight, yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely gonna be there.
Well, I'm sorry, I thought we were going
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I have
I can't do
a project I'm working on that has me up in Washington State.
No need to apologize, I'm just sorry, I was looking forward to
Yeah.
shooting the breeze.
Yeah, I know.
Well, that just means I have to come back,
Yeah, that's right. Or I have an office in Richmond, and I was just up there a few weeks ago in Richmond. Yeah, but it was just like, it was one of these quick things. Yeah, yeah. If I have a weekend up there, then I'll try to connect. Did you happen to get an email from me this week? Okay. I tried to contact you. I didn't know if I got
Did you, if you contacted me, I mean, it may be somewhere, but I don't know. I I didn't know that you were getting me. Because I thought we were good to go. Okay, well.
Yeah, I sent you an email, but,
I know Daryl refused.
I know what Paul's seeing.
yep, and I used the
But
two
they're not
email
gonna
addresses
win or
I
not.
got for you, so.
Right, right.
Yeah, but that's why I don't.
That's just
I don't know, I don't think we should be struggling, but I lost spectacularly.
So, these, well, let's walk the Jeff into the executive lounge. Okay. You know how, I know how you roll. Hey, Sam, I walk around like this, been doing. Good to see you. Going on?
I think it does. I absolutely do. Because same thing about turning the corner, you said same thing, or why do you have about anarchists in the party? That looks so bad. Okay, but it's basically saying you can have them, they just can't act like them.
It's like 3 blocks away from here.
That isn't really, Daryl's position was very consistent. So it's basically, it's like, I don't care if you're kosher, as long as you eat bacon, that's fine. That's exactly what it's.
I don't know that I go to that extent, but I do see what.
I have no idea what
Yeah.
Right.
Right, so it's a purity test for our site.
Actually, we got that early because I misread their website. So there's a Western.
They didn't go out to us for Daryl too? I think this would be great to have a super, to be honest with you.
Pretty primitive.
Yeah.
But Sue's not shy, so she's
still not.
Yeah, well, if I ran, I'd file. I would have no problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
And I think Daryl's probably the only person in the world that this has come up. And when this argument happened then, I can tell you that is exactly how people took it. As a way for the LNC to solve the voting to keep Daryl from getting. He took it that way, and a lot of people took it. I'm not saying that was the intention, because it doesn't matter. You know, if you say things, doesn't matter. You know how the intention was.
Gotcha. Okay, worth considering.
That's why I wanted a roll call, because I know this is going to be an issue.
I passed.
So how you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah, Phil moving in.
August 16th. And I actually came up.
It's going good. We are gonna talk to you about
That's when we moved.
It's nothing to our house, or you know what I mean? But it's just so you don't get taken off guard.
It's a heads
coming
up.
up on 2 years ago.
Basically, it's all it is.
Pneumonia.
I know. And then I left on January 2nd for a weekend.
It's nothing that will affect the party.
She couldn't go because she had pneumonia. So she was filling
I know y'all had some treasure issues
Yeah,
also,
yeah, yeah.
so you can
No big
empathize.
What time is the event?
6 noon this week. See, I was the one that was after.
Yeah.
I was the treasurer of Sarah and handed it off.
With the events, yeah, we're not close to each other.
We never do. I don't know why they do. I don't know why we have Saturday night.
I've got people coming Well, hopefully people can keep reaching the point very brief. Yeah, I would say this. I don't know if you're going to start to work. And I know what like it's yeah. You didn't pass around the leave list. Did you get that from everybody that you needed to?
I asked for people to email me.
Do you know if they did?
Most people did. Well, no, 40% of the people did.
Just looking at tomorrow and I know what we are.
Yeah, no, I'll keep.
I'm sorry. Do you want to circulate the lead time with.
That's what was suggested.
I asked people to email it to have it on OneNote.
Oh.
If you email it to me, I'll update OneNote. Oh, just tell me.
My flight's at 4:45, so I better say 2:30.
I would say 2.
Oh, 2:30.
Okay.
Put me down for 2:30.
I broke down and did it.
Well, I should have it.
You might have to But then how many items are left over and you bring it up instead of petition saying, okay, we're gonna do this,
Oh, yeah.
For sure. I mean, especially like, regardless of guys.
I'm ready.
And then age. And so when you're getting ready, we'll certainly start off.
It's just, there was some work-related circumstances, basically.
Put it off for a couple of
We'll let you get
That's kind of.
It's actually a part of the song.
Right, exactly. I think if I'm
I grouped it into 2 things. Rush hour is about 45 minutes. So what I was saying in Boston. But I never get to drive. That is with rush hour anyway. So
I don't have everybody.
6:30. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. It is this whole area is partnership with National Parks.
Yeah, so far the earliest is
The tenants in the area. So every lot has to stay 6 acres is very heavily wooded.
If you look in the OneNote under the
Outside, so we're pretty excited about it. It's old, like this up. It's quite astonishing to me, but essentially the woman who built the house was an artist in DC, and she lived there until she died. Her estate is yeah, we're pretty psyched up. We lose a lot of privacy, so they sure know something about what
Hello. We're back. 1 minute late. And the next item.
Order.
That's enough. The next item on the agenda is the Candidate Support Committee. Mr. Goldstein.
Yeah, as I stated earlier, due to a lack of candidate requests for financial support, the Candidate Support Committee has not met since the last LNC meeting, so we have no report to give.
Can I inquire?
Sure.
You have had no candidates from no states who have requested support.
I've had no candidates from no states that formally requested support through our request form. I've had a couple informal requests from a couple people through Ms. Hogarth from North Carolina, but they've not seen fit to submit a formal request for us. I had an informal email request from Marco Battaglia, I believe running for something or other in Des Moines, and we just talked informally back and forth about staff sending out an email. And Daniel, was that email ever sent out?
Yes, it went out to the registered members in Iowa.
Oh, okay, so that's the extent of support that people have asked us for since the last meeting.
So no monetary support that they filled out a request for, and
Correct.
we've been just doing informal support.
Correct.
Okay. Do you anticipate the candidate support committee meeting between now and the next meeting?
I would assume so.
Are there other things that you guys do, or?
Well, there was another thing that we had wanted to do, but the change in executive director kind of derailed it. We wanted to start planning some training workshops around the country. And that kind of got derailed because I had had some initial discussions with Wes about it a while ago. And then Lauren had other things on her mind during the financial crunch, and we just never got around to discussing it formally.
Ms. Barlos?
There's one coming up in Maine that the Libertarian Party of Maine is hosting, because Kara and I are speaking at it.
Yeah, but that's not something that we were involved in.
I didn't know if you'd want to be.
This-
So I'll send you the dates and info.
If they want us to help that with that, I mean, we're more than willing to help, but we've
Okay.
not heard from anybody on it.
I'll get with you.
Mr. Phillips, then Mr. Smith.
There is a proposal from Kara about some training workshops that didn't make the agenda. I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, I saw a mention of that on Facebook. I wish you'd let me know about it.
Right, so
I could put it.
I helped her edit it, and
Yeah.
then she.
It's in the staff report, I believe.
There was
I'll take a
Well,
look
if
at
you
it. see
guys
where-
want
see
to
what-
bring it up, then the agenda can be suspended tomorrow, if you get there. Mr. Smith?
Just so you're aware, the folks on the ASC were talking about maybe trying to get a hold of lpaction.org so that we could do some updates there with trainings and stuff, and so maybe that's something we can work on together.
Yeah, I don't know who has who.
I believe it's still Andy's baby.
Is it?
I think.
Okay, yeah, we had talked to
Mr. Mullen?
Daniel about it.
I would bet that Andy would be happy to have some assistance with LP Action. He's a little tied up with other projects these days.
It hasn't been updated for quite some time.
Right, and so if there's people that want to help with LP Action, I don't want to speak for Mr. Burns, but I'm guessing, because I talk to him about every day, that he would accept some help.
Because we wanted to make training videos for that, so maybe we could do some candidate stuff as well. That'd be great. All right.
Okay. Anything else on this item? Hearing none, we will next move to the Employment Policy and Compensation Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I submitted my report and will be happy to entertain any questions concerning that report. As always, I would like to thank my distinguished colleagues, Mr. Bishop Henchman and Mr. Redpath. It is a pleasure to work with them. They are truly wonderful people, and they're just damn good. I also would like to thank Ms. Doherty. Ms. Doherty very graciously consented to an exit interview, which we were able to conduct. Unfortunately, Mr. Bishop Henchman had a little mini crisis that came up the afternoon.
I was getting tired that day.
You could have pushed that
So
off.
is that type of crisis, okay. And so Mr. Redpath and I, we spoke to Ms. Doherty. My impression is Ms. Doherty was extremely gracious and straightforward in terms of answering our questions. We will try to put together the pieces from that interview and then provide a report to the LNC. I'm not sure how long it will take. Hopefully, I would hope that by the end of next month we'll actually have something for the LNC to look at. But I very much appreciate her willingness to take the time and trouble to be part of such an interview. We did ask her some questions that I'm sure were not the most pleasant to answer, but I thought that she was very gracious in terms of her responses. And again, I'll be happy to take any questions. Of course, my distinguished colleagues are here. They're also, I'm sure, willing to answer.
Questions for members of the PCC? Hearing none. Mr. Longstreth?
The only question I have is, has the EPCC been consulted on our new membership, or not membership director, but development director? Has any consultation or anything been done with the EPCC?
No one has contacted me concerning a request for assistance in the search for such a person. Now, I'm not saying that we would necessarily, it's certainly not something that had to be done. So if it hasn't been done, and I'm not aware that it has been done, this doesn't trouble me, because if someone wants our assistance, I certainly am willing to help. I suspect Mr. Bishop Henchman and Mr. Redpath will be similarly disposed. But as far as I'm aware, no request for assistance has been offered.
I sent Mr. Fishman some edits to the job description when he posted that to the public list.
I also sent him some suggestions.
Mr. Fishman?
And also, Mr. Bishop Henchman advised me somewhat on salary range.
Okay. Other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Dr. Lark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Historical Preservation Committee, 15 minutes.
Sure, 1 second, let me pull up my report. This is going on in votes. Alrighty. There's been a lot of work going on with the Historical Preservation Committee. Again, the committee's really focused to getting a lot of information updated prior to the upcoming presidential election, because we think there will be a lot of traffic on there. The back end is what's taken a long time. For those of you not too familiar with wikis, it kind of really was a hot mess before. The categories were all wrong, so I had to manually go through every page and recategorize everything. That's almost completely done except for the images. That's a whole other thing. But we're talking about hundreds of manual hours of fixing that. But now it is usable if people want to start searching by categories. I really want to encourage everyone, though, for information that you're starting to gather, put it on Elpedia, because then it will be there forever for people who want that particular information. When I've had state chairs now contact me about delegates and things like that, the prior state delegation manual I have up there, and a lot of things that Ms. Mattson prepared before, and it's been very, very helpful to them. And candidates, put your pages up, because what ends up on Wikipedia might not be exactly what you want on Wikipedia, and they won't let you edit it. So get it up on Elpedia, because we're getting more traffic. We have a big batch getting scans right now of all of the prior press releases. There are some gems in there that we can reuse. Hundreds and hundreds of press releases that are really, really great. And that's one of the big projects of this year. Also, we're working on an index of every resolution ever passed by the LNC in a big index too. We used to do that manually. Joe Dean, I think, was the last one, but we haven't really kept track of that since then. I think there was questions.
Mr. Redpath, and then Dr. Lark. Sorry, were you up first, Dr. Lark?
That's right. And I will yield to the more distinguished and certainly more handsome.
I insist. Age before beauty.
Well, since you did that, the Dorothy Parker response was pearls before swine. But that was Dorothy Parker, not I, of course. Ms. Harless, I apologize. Perhaps you and your colleagues have made this clear. Let us say something is posted on Elpedia, and it is wrong. And it's basically, this person said this about that. And the other person says, no, that's wrong. It's materially false. How are disputes over material, how are they handled? Is it simply, this person posts this here, that person posts that there as a response? How would that be handled?
Are you familiar with Wikipedia very much?
Somewhat, yes.
We handle it very much the same way. So we at first try to tell the two editors to try to work it out amongst themselves. And if they cannot work it out amongst themselves, it goes to the committee. And then the committee will make a decision.
So there is an adjudication mechanism in the sense of the committee?
Yes.
Thank you.
At a public meeting. If we grow to, bigger, like Wikipedia, so there'll be a more formal, larger process. Right now, we maybe have one coming up, but the two people haven't tried to work it out yet.
Because I've seen arguments on Wikipedia.
Oh, the edit wars are wonderful.
Thank you.
Mr. Redpath.
Is there a list of dates and sites of LNC meetings, historical list of LNC meetings?
Not all of them yet, but I'll send you a link. There's a pretty complete list of them.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no objection, Mr. Nana, then Mr. Longstreth. Go ahead, Mr. Nana.
I know we have a fundraiser tonight, so would somebody like to indulge me and set us like a hard stop time so that like I know when I can leave to get to the place, like it freshened up?
I'm not much inclined to go past 5:30 unless
Like,
people really insist.
Right, like that's how I feel, and honestly, maybe even like.
Are you
before
taking
that.
my time, Mr.
I mean, I know that there are people that
yes.
take longer to get ready than myself.
I understand that.
Point of information,
Mr. Fishman?
I will be departing the residence at 6 p.m. and so any questions that you want to address me beforehand.
Because you're not here tomorrow.
Because I'm not here tomorrow. Tomorrow, Ms. Doherty will be filling in my position.
Okay. Mr. Longstreth?
Yes. Does the Historical Preservation Committee, I know that you guys are intimately involved in running and making sure that LPDA is maintained, updated, and that all information is as accurate as possible. What procedures are generally in place to help ensure that that is happening? Because this is going to tie into something I bring up later, so if you could outline that.
Well, again, a lot of it depends on how familiar you are with wiki culture, but it is very much a community policed thing where it's a collaborative wiki. But right now our traffic isn't so heavy. I police everything right now. I patrol every single edit, and it's all been fairly innocuous, and I flag ones that I don't know or they aren't properly sourced, and the committee takes a look at it. But we haven't had a problem really with that yet. But every edit is patrolled. You know, there's a list, there's a management list that comes out each day, and I patrol every single one.
Other questions from Ms. Harlos? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Harlos.
Thank you.
IT committee, and that's Mr. Merced now?
Well, Liz, did you want to do this one, or do you want me to do this one? Either way. I mean, I'm interim chair. Yeah.
Either way, there's a report. Anybody have any questions? We can make this really quick and save some time.
May I say, I did not agree. In the report, it said something about Juanita Billings wanted to change the name of the committee to Information Services. I don't agree. I think that could be confusing. I mean, if you want to make it IT Services Committee, well, whatever. But I think that muddies the water as to what the committee's about.
Understood. We haven't fully
no
discussed
official
that yet.
changes made.
Yeah,
this is
no.
just noted in our.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up.
It was a suggestion that she made.
Okay, I would not agree with that suggestion.
Karen?
I think I'm a bit confused, and it's my fault, I'm sure. Who's the chair? Is Ms. Van Horn?
Mr. Merced now.
Yeah.
Okay, I got
Interim
confused.
chair.
Thank you.
Now I'm the chair.
I'll have the committee page updated, thank you.
And yeah.
I'm the secretary, if you can believe
Yes.
that.
I will have the committee page updated, that'll be wonderful.
Congratulations, Mr. Merced.
We know how that, well.
Yeah, I was really reluctant. I was like,
how you got.
First we tried to like Ryan Graham as
We
chair,
tried to,
and he was like, no.
we first tried to nominate somebody who
So I was
wasn't
like,
there.
okay.
Yeah, and then he said, okay, I'm not there, but don't do that to me.
If there's no objection, Mr. Molman?
Since we've named the other officers, I thought I'd mention it. I believe we made Brian Grant.
He's vice chair, yeah. He did accept vice chair.
Yeah.
From Georgia.
He graciously accepted that after declining the chair spot in absence.
Any other?
We actually have a project we're working on, and Kent highlighted some of that. It is a project where we're going to be trying to bundle together the packaging and the credentialing for the COC, and we won't go into all the details. We'll have more on that in the November meeting, but Ken and Daniel touched on that. I believe it was Daniel's idea originally. Is that correct?
Well, to use it for the convention.
You messaged me a while back and I said it sounds like
Sometimes
something
fall
IT committee
into
should do, or work on or help with. It has potential to save money and staff time and things like that. So it has potential to really help financially and time and staff wise. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you. Ballot access, Mr. Redpath.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I submitted my report. I have a few comments and corrections and amplifications and what have you. First of all, I just wanted to point out, say that there's been no ballot access committee meeting since March 1. That's my fault. I apologize to my committee members and to this committee. As many of you know, it's a busy time for me. Recently, I'm preparing to move from Virginia to Illinois and other things going on, and we are going to be meeting. Obviously, ballot access is going to be heating up here, and it's going to become much more important quite soon, and we will have a meeting, although probably not within the next 3 weeks, because that's my moving period. We've spent no dollars on ballot access yet this year, absolutely zero, as you have seen, and I have mixed feelings about that. Because we raise funds in the name of ballot access. I don't think we guarantee that it's going to be spent on ballot access. I do think the Arkansas party was hurt by. They felt kind of hurt by this, but they got themselves on the ballot, which is both good and bad. Actually, I think here's the thing. Arkansas is in what region?
7.
So, okay, all right. If you read that report, you saw the report from Michael Pacco in there saying they spent $57 grand on that petition drive, okay? And of that, $20,000 was fundraising expense. And what is happening is that, and it's going on with North Dakota right now. In here I talked about the North Dakota petition drive. It's going on in North Dakota where they're working, and I like the fundraiser. I consider him a friend. And it's great that the LNC is not expending any money, but these operations entail pretty high fundraising costs. $57,000 to complete that drive in Arkansas is too damn high, in my opinion. And it's
What's the percentage?
of fundraising, 2057s. Almost a third.
Okay.
No, it's almost a third. And so in any event, I'm just saying it's pretty steep fundraising cost, and North Dakota is they're going to get themselves on the ballot, and great, with the party petition, but the way this is happening is that there are pretty steep fundraising costs for these state parties in how they're handling this themselves. Just one change yet. Alabama is 56,000. It gets worse. It's 51,416. I read in the Alabama report in that region that now it's up to 56,000 valid SIGs for a party petition to be successfully completed, and the Republican Party there is foursquare against reforming ballot access, is my understanding. Alaska, one change to the report, Alaska, which I did not realize until recently, Alaska, we are a limited political party, and because I believe Gary Johnson got over 3% of the vote, so it is our understanding, we have asked the Secretary of State, or maybe not the Secretary of State, Board of Elections, proper authority, can we put our presidential ticket on the ballot with no petitioning? And put them on the ballot. I think we're awaiting an answer on that from Alaska. Our reading of the law is that yes, we do have that ability. Now, the Alaska Party is trying to, as it said in my report, we are 1,313 party registrations short of regaining party status in Alaska. And I was on a call with Mr. Fishman and John Watts, the chair, somebody else from Alaska, I think was on that call, but I forget who. In any event, we decided on trying to contact people up there that we think might be willing to come over and join us. And I'm not exactly sure where that whole process stands right now. Can you speak to this, Mr. Fishman?
Sure. So it took a while. They thought they had historical data that we would be able to track to find people who had changed registration, but they had either the data they didn't understand what it was beforehand, or they didn't have it, so they only had current voter files. So we were not able to find people who had changed their registration from Republican or Democrat to unenrolled or formerly Libertarian. To that end, though, we still are going to try to identify people who would make sense to call. The nature of the size of Alaska is that it's very difficult to travel around and do voter registration. However, the Secretary of State has a website online. So with Mr. Smith's help of collecting a file, we're going to organize call banking to try to call people and say, could you get online right now and change your voter registration, which we think will be more effective than petitioning in person. Also, it allows the opportunity for volunteers who are outside of Alaska to potentially make phone calls on their behalf, and that's where the movement to get the extra 1,300 registered voters is right now.
Okay, all right. And would it be possible to possibly call banking or maybe even mailing postcards to people if we can identify people's addresses? I mean, maybe a postcard campaign?
We do have that information. The information that we have isn't as accurate as I would like, considering the expenditure of postage money, but I would say that if we wanted to spend money on that, we do have addresses of people who are unenrolled, but we don't have the past history that would allow me to look at it and say, this person is a better target.
Okay, all right. All right, well, in any event, we may have party status for the presidential ticket in Alaska. We should. Wisconsin, Mr. Phillips informed me that my assumption in the report was that Wisconsin would do a 2,000 valid SIG petition drive for the presidential ticket. Mr. Phillips informs me that the Wisconsin party would like to do a 10,000 valid SIG party petition drive, and I intend to investigate that, hopefully with Mr. Phillips' help. But I intend to investigate that, calling the Wisconsin chair and saying, great, now let's put a plan together here. And I think they could start that any time. Is that correct? Okay, that's what I thought. Maryland can start any time, and it looks like we've got to do a petition drive in Maryland. We lost the court case for now anyway, claiming that, hey, we have 22,000 registered voters, okay? Why do we have to go collect 10,000 valid signatures when we have 22,000 registered voters? Is my understanding that under Maryland law, I think we have to get to 45,000 registered voters, something like that. We have to have, I think, about double the number we have right now. We're organically growing there, but not fast enough. Registration drive would be pretty darn expensive. And Maryland can start now. Maryland has, I believe I stated in my report, I think $15,000 to put toward this petition drive, but they're going to need LNC help, and we can start there anytime. And you know, regarding, I also want to speak to my summary of estimated needed LNC financial contributions in 2019 and 2020, so from summing to $142,500. You're probably thinking, 142.5, Bill, are you BSing us? Yeah, I am. Just kidding. I'm not. But that was not as funny as I thought it was going to be. But it's aspirational. Okay, I will put it. I'll put it that way. I really do think that it is possible that we could do these. I think we could possibly spend, now it doesn't include Wisconsin. I would say that if we were budgeting at this point, I think we'd want to get this done, we should probably budget some more in that, because things kind of go wrong. But I would say it should be a goal of ours to try to spend that little on ballot access in the remaining presidential cycle in front of us. And that's a hell of a lot less than what we used to spend. And so I just wanted to say, it is possible that we're going to need more than 142.5 plus whatever you put in there for Wisconsin, but I would certainly aim to try to keep it to $200,000 or less the rest of this presidential petition drive. And with that, I think I've said everything I wanted to say, and I'll be happy to entertain questions.
Dr. Larkin?
Yes. First of all, Mr. Redpath, thanks to you and your committee as always. I think that with respect to the $10,000 that you're suggesting for Virginia, it is certainly my hope that we will come. Virginia, 10,000. That we will spend considerably less. I'll probably pay some of the freight myself, and I also will threaten other people with bodily harm unless they step up to the plate. There was also the point we were actually contemplating not letting you leave, so that we could benefit from your experience. With respect to Maryland, have you spoken to Bob Johnston?
Sure have. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Just this past week.
Thank you.
Mr. Goldstein, then Mr. Fishman?
Mr. Chair, do I need to move to suspend the rules to offer a resolution of congratulations to Arkansas for doing it themselves?
No, it's related to ballot access as germane to the report. I think just being recognized and offering the resolution would be fine.
Then I would make a resolution. I would move that the LNC, my brain just went blank, congratulate the state of Arkansas Libertarian Party for its strong leadership and ability in attaining ballot access on its own without any financial support from the Libertarian National Committee.
And I would second that.
And a second from Mr. Redpath. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, say that again, Slover.
I don't know what I said.
I'll
Check
get it
the
from the
tape.
recording. I got the gist of what you said.
Razorback, good.
We strongly commend and congratulate the Libertarian Party of Arkansas for attaining ballot access on their own without any financial aid from the Libertarian National Committee.
Thank God.
Mr. Redpath?
If I could speak in favor of the motion just very briefly.
You can.
I think they've done a great job. Michael Packo's done a great job there in Arkansas as chair, and it's always pretty smooth sailing there, and due to a lot of people, but in particular Mr. Packo, and I absolutely urge everyone to vote for that motion.
Is there any further need to speak to it? Is there any objection to that resolution?
I think we should all have a vote in favor of it.
We can do that. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Did you vote, sir?
Make sure that gets noted. Without objection, I have Mr. Molman, Ms. Adams, yes, no? No. And then Mr. Phillips.
I just wanted to remind the committee, something Mr. Redpath didn't mention is that the closer it gets to the election, the more expensive petitioning gets. And so just keep that in mind, that it is really actually a very true free market supply and demand thing. If you're doing drives right now, they will be much cheaper than they will be this time next year. I just think that's important for the LNC to remember and consider that that's just how this game works. And good luck to you, Bill.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you for bringing that up. I should have brought it up myself, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
Mr. Phillips,
I
and
just-
Ms. Bilyeu.
While we're congratulating Arkansas, I just wanted to take a minute to thank Mr. Hayes for his efforts in that. He went out at his own expense and petitioned and fundraised for the party and everything combined. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thing about it.
Hmm?
Can I speak about it?
Briefly, yeah.
So I just want to say, I ran into Polly and Andy up there. There's some of the professionals doing it, and it is not as easy as it used to be, according to them, to get the signatures. The traffic's different, and so it's a much harder process. So that resolution means even more to that state of Arkansas for having done that, because it's more difficult than it used to be, according to our long-term petitioning gathers.
All right. I believe I have Mr. Bishop Henchman, then Ms. Bilyeu. I think that was the order.
I think you were.
Or is it Bilyeu first?
Yeah,
Ms.
I
Bilyeu,
just,
then Mr. Bishop
and
Henchman.
he kind of beat me to it there, but Aaron and I did want to recognize not only Daniel, but anybody else in here who either went there or contributed in any way. I know those of us who couldn't physically go there to collect signatures helped with validation and giving money. So anybody else in here or who's listening who contributed to that, thank you.
Mr. Bishop Henchman.
My question's related. What could we, on your list of stuff in 2019 and 2020, what could we start in 2019?
Maryland and Wisconsin, I believe. And everything else, I think, would have to wait until 2020.
Alaska's voter registration drive.
Well, Alaska, right, Alaska voter registration, but Alabama, if you do the independent, I think there's no substitution, so we'd have to wait on that. Illinois can't start until late March. Maine is would be Memorial Day. Maryland now, New Hampshire Memorial Day, Pennsylvania starts in February, Rhode Island I think would be post-Memorial Day, I believe, and Virginia would be January 2. And then there are others in here that, I think the state should be able to do it on their own.
So,
Thank you.
what's the number between Maryland and Wisconsin that we would need to expend?
Wisconsin,
Wisconsin hasn't given us a figure yet.
yeah, I don't know. Maryland, I suggested, I think 25,000, I think. 25,000, and then plus 15 would be 40, but
That's
they
40.
need 10. And the problem also is, in Maryland, they have this very stringent signature requirement, which the judge unfortunately would not rule on as to whether that was constitutional or not. For instance, if I were a Marylander, which I'm not, but if I were to sign a petition, I believe definitely Bill Redpath wouldn't work, and I believe William Redpath wouldn't work. I believe it would have to be William B. Redpath in order for and so it's crazy, I know. And I would think, and she, basically my understanding is, well, this is not, you don't have standing right now because this is something that would have to be, litigated after the petition drive. Well, then it's too late.
Yeah, and I believe that's based on old case law from Maven when I was actually still chair in Maryland. There was a bad initiative that went to court and got the courts to decide that they were going to be super strict with signatures, which has then flown downhill for everybody else afterwards. So always be careful when you go to court what you ask for. 10,000 signature drive in Wisconsin that it could start now and it has a relatively long period.
Not 100% sure. It's 90-day period. I'm not 100%.
It's 90 days from start to finish.
Yeah, I'm not 100%
What's the
concerned.
rough number for a 10,000 ballot drive that has to be done in 90 days if it's in this year? And I can, Mr. Molman is mouthing a number for you.
Total cost?
He says
yeah, I was going to say at least, I was going to say 40 to 50.
Okay. All right.
Minus volunteer SIGs, I would say, probably.
Is it your inclination to do any ballot access work this year? Because
I would
we've
love to,
done
but
half a year without it.
I don't have to take you down what comes after but. I would love to, but do we have the scratch?
So fundraising is an issue?
That's what I've heard.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the Ballot Access Committee?
Just a point of information, and it may be best answered by Mr. Hagan, but how much did we set aside for ballot access this year already? I can't recall off the top of my head.
22.
22.
You mean the budgeted item?
Budgeted item, yes.
What was that allocated for?
Nothing.
It was nothing.
Technically Alaska, I think.
Oh, it's the voter registration drive?
But that's just what we said. It wasn't in the actual resolution.
We didn't sign anything other than that.
We haven't obligated, as he mentioned, we haven't obligated anything from that list.
But if we were, we'd have to raise that budgeted amount if we were to do Wisconsin, and then the 90-day window would be, it's one of those things where you don't want it to get too cold. If we were going to do Wisconsin this year, we'd need to get going pretty soon.
Phillips?
Wisconsin has two options. They have a 10,000 party signature and a 2,000, and that's their complaint. They think the 10,000 will be easier because they can do it in the better weather versus the 2,000, which would have to be in the dead of winter.
Okay. I don't know the calendaring, and I don't,
okay.
unless
That's what
somebody knows for
that's what
sure
the
the
chair told me.
calendaring.
All right, we'll figure that out.
If there's not objection, Mr. Molman?
I was just gonna ask, actually I have a question and a follow-up question. The next meeting of this committee is in November.
Of this year. Yep.
So if there was to be a drive started, you would have to do some things here to make it that if money came in, you could expend the money to finish a $40,000 drive.
So we're in a weird spot. The LNC would have to increase the amount of the budget line item in order for the executive committee to be able to expend the money, and it's subject to whatever provisos that we haven't had to look at this year, but they exist. So either the LNC would have to increase the budget line item at this meeting, or it would have to be done as a mail ballot, which takes the number of days it takes. Mr. Longstreet.
I believe there's a third option of an electronic meeting.
Yes, you're right. An electronic meeting, although it has really the same time periods because you have to call it and then you got to get there. So you're same amount of days, pretty much. Other questions ballot access related? Hearing none, we are Dr. Lark.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's appropriate to recognize that a distinguished former chair of the LNC has entered the room, Mr. Neal. He is also the chair of the International Alliance of Libertarian Parties. So I think we should recognize
his. Thank you. Orders of the day have a recess. We are just after 5 o'clock. We do not have to have the recess if we don't want to. We have a 10-minute item that we wanted to address prior to our evening recess today. I would prefer to not have us go past 5:30. Is there a strong preference to go past that? Mr. Redpath?
I would think, what time does the barbecue start for people?
6:30 or 6:30?
Well, I think we should go just 6. I mean, something. No,
Women got a chance.
People got to get ready.
5:45. Because I mean,
Trust me on this.
You don't have to put makeup on.
he used to sell used cars.
He did.
And he's a lawyer.
And if you enjoy the experience, I would be happy to allow you to make a motion and watch the votes.
I got you, Bill.
That sounds like a dare.
Tomato, tomato.
Okay, all right.
So I think we'll just dispense with any recess prior to that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda with new business with previous notice, we've actually made it into another thing.
No, side of November meeting.
Well, no, that's the last thing before the recess.
Okay, never mind.
So I'm working backwards from the 5:30. So presidential debate media on the LP website, Mr. Longstreth for 10 minutes. Don't feel the need to take all 10.
I do not feel the need to take all 10. Bottom line, folks, I wanted us to hash this out a little bit over email. We did, sent it out there. Ultimately, what we need to decide is, are we going to allow media from third party to be on our website and available for people to use as reference to help them determine who our candidates are going to be, i.e. there are a lot of podcast networks out there that are doing presidential debates and doing that sort of thing. There are state conventions that are hosting presidential debates. That is all forms of media that is, I believe, important for our constituents to be able to reference in making their decision when it comes time to nominate or give our nomination to a presidential, to our presidential candidate. So the purpose of this agenda item is a little bit to facilitate discussion, a little bit to figure out who wants to work with me on this, and ideally if we can come up with something now, that would be great, but I fully expect this to not be resolved tonight, but to see who would be interested in being a sublet kind of committee on this with me.
Without objection, Ms. Adams was a little before you, Sam, and then we'll go to Mr. Goldstein. Go ahead, Ms. Adams.
I'll help Richard Danby.
Okay. Mr. Goldstein?
I actually would be opposed to doing this at all because we have no control over what criteria these entities use, who they are, who they're going to allow on. Remember, we just set criteria today for allowing presidential candidates to appear on our website. So unless perhaps those same criteria are opposed to these webcasts as to who participates in them, I would actually, I don't think the National Party should be in the business of advertising other people's webcasts and podcasts, even if it's a state affiliate.
Ms. Harlos?
I had mentioned this to Mr. Longstreth. Why don't we utilize Lpedia for this? To make event pages on Lpedia. It's a historical event of a presidential debate that took place, and put the video because we're treating it as history rather than endorsement.
Mr. Longstreth, then Dr. Lark, then Mr. Nano without objection.
So part of my goal in bringing up this discussion is to establish what those standards would be, so that way we have those standards out there. The problem is we keep kicking the can. The letter that I received from the member at We Are Libertarians mentioned several things that he's been told, concerned about bias, concerned about taking away from earned media, concerned about production quality. All of those things are things that this body can decide. These are our standards. This is how you get on the website. And that's what I think we should actually be talking about, not just saying a blanket no.
All right, so Dr. Lark, then Mr. Nano without objection, then Mr. Smith, and Mr. Bishop-Henchman. Dr. Lark, go ahead.
Yes, as I noted in a message to the LNC, I very much appreciate Mr. Longstreth bringing this to our attention. Frankly, this is something that's going to take a while. What I would suggest is that Mr. Longstreth put together an ad hoc committee, let him chair it, and that he and his colleagues come back to us within a month of a proposal. That way we have specific, discrete things with which we can wrestle. And I think that would be the best way to proceed.
Okay. Mr. Nano?
Yeah, I guess the question to everybody here is, what is the sense of the body? Why don't we just do debates as a party, and we can control the production value, and we can control all these things? Like, why don't we just make a committee that schedules debates for the actual party?
A commission on presidential.
What kind of budget?
Well, I'm not saying that we have the budget for it now, but I think this is something we should be thinking about. If it's not feasible now, but for the future, we should be self-funding or getting a media outlet to host debates for us, as opposed to saying, okay, we're going to farm this out to some third-party podcast who may or may not be great, who knows? But why don't we just do it ourselves and and we control everything, and then, you know, that's gonna be something we have to hash out, but I would prefer that to hosting third-party things on our website.
Mr. Smith?
Maybe Ken wants another job.
He does.
No, that's not what I was gonna say.
Okay.
But I agree with Dr. Lark. I think maybe I would suggest that if maybe you wanted to table this till tomorrow and come up with some wording on maybe creating an ad hoc committee or something, I'd be down to help you with that for sure.
It doesn't have to be a formal
Yep.
committee.
Yeah, you can make an ad hoc
I-
committee.
I've
It's not
already,
official.
if I may, Mr. Chair, I've already thrown that out there right from the get-go. I intend to make an ad hoc committee. Aaron has volunteered. Who else wants to do this?
I'd love to be on it with you.
Thank you.
All right, so everyone is going to get with Richard.
I was just pointing
I
out
just
to
didn't
him,
know if
he
they
had,
wanted more
when
specific.
people volunteer, I want to rope them in.
Dustin as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Bishop Henchman.
I'm a little confused. I thought Mr. Fishman had like set out criteria for debates to be, and so like, am I wrong on that, or are we looking to change that, or so I just wanted to throw that.
Mr. Fishman?
So prior to the Libertarian presidential candidate debate in Massachusetts, I had been hearing people talking about, I've been hearing roosters as well, talking about the lack of LP support of the debates. And so I informed the people who were doing it that I had criteria that I considered professional. One of which was flawless audio, another of which was multiple camera shoot, one of which would have been lecterns, candidates standing at a lectern rather than sitting in chairs passing microphones around. I contracted with Galtworks, which some of you may have noticed, that produced Libertarian productions in the past. We did not achieve what I considered a professional level of broadcast. It's okay. It's not bad. I gave it to the candidates. Now that it's done, I encourage them to share it around, chop it up. There's a lot of useful stuff in there, but it is not professional. So we're going to try again. November 2nd in South Carolina, there's going to be another debate. Stuart Flood, who many of you know, the chair of South Carolina, is assembling, they have rented a hall, an auditorium on a college campus. They will be giving out pizza to college students who wish to come and attend the debate. There will be a multi-camera setup. They have a 16-channel board for audio. They're going to have an engineer on the audio. They are in the process of building assembly lecterns that can be taken apart, which will then be shipped off to other places that wish to do the debates in the future. So we will try again. And Mr. Flood has committed a significant amount of money to hiring a professional production company to make that happen. So our standards are pretty simple. I'm happy to support debates that look professional. And to that end, we yield to Mr. Phillips, who was also at the Massachusetts debate.
Mr. Phillips?
He is absolutely correct about the quality of the Massachusetts debate and how it turned out. And at the risk of shooting my own campaign in the foot, I also would have long been an advocate of professional looking things. Though I would address the objection of third party because if NBC decided to get a wild hair up their butt and host our debates, they're a third party. So I don't think that's necessarily a valid objection, but I do think that we should be insisting on some professional quality.
Is there any further time on this item?
There is 2 minutes and a fraction.
If there's not objection from Mr. Woolman, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question, I think you, Mr. Chair. Is it appropriate for Mr. Fishman to consult with this potential ad hoc
It's always appropriate.
I
intended to.
The chair
Yeah, he
would
was gonna
not
not
object
ask for
to
permission.
Mr. Fishman consuming time to assist this committee, this ad hoc committee.
I don't have an objection. And unless
The
the
people in
committee
charge-
decides to make it known that they do, then there isn't. Anything further on this item? Hearing nothing further on this item, we'll move
Chair,
to.
I move that we go to regional reports and then recess for the day after they're concluded.
I'm going to declare that to be out of order because the amount of time it's going to take is not going to be consonant with my goal of getting out of here by 5:30 and getting our 10 minutes for the location of the next meeting.
Mr. Chair.
Would you like to defer your item to tomorrow?
Yes.
All right.
With the indulgence of
I don't hear any objections to it. Ms. Harlos, can you get the Dream and Promise Act in 10 minutes?
No,
Okay.
that wasn't
Why does it
prepared
say
yet.
10 minutes?
Ms. Mattson, would you like to do the convention special events?
That's probably not 10-minute item.
All
Maybe we
right.
should go to our last item.
Man, I'm
Mr. Chair, I move that we go to the site of the November meeting.
Well, then we'll just go straight to that, and then we will recess for the day after that.
If I could go by too, I know Jim Turney is waiting to give a 15-minute presentation, which might be a good time if
That doesn't need 10 minutes, though.
I don't,
Will Mr. Turney be here tomorrow?
Mr. Turney's on the phone.
Oh,
we just need to call him, but he
But-
is patiently waiting this week.
Oh,
I don't think we're gonna get to it today. I apologize, Mr. Turney.
Yes.
Student chairs.
Let's go to the November meeting and just go there and be done.
okay.
So the site of the November meeting, who wanted that?
Mr. Goldstein?
I did.
Oh,
I
Mr.
thought-
Redmond.
I did.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it was my understanding it's not been cited, but then somehow Miami got floated, and then I heard that maybe there's a deposit on something in Miami, and maybe all of this is just, maybe I imagined all this, but I just, but I would like to know, where do things stand in terms of citing the November 16 and 17 meeting?
My understanding of where the way things are is we set the date of the November meeting in the last LNC meeting. Subsequent to that LNC meeting, myself, Ms. Doherty, and Mr. Kraus looked at fundraising possibilities, especially with the recommendation of Mr. Nikela and the fundraising, the people in our database who are in Miami. Also looked at the fact that it's November and went forward finding a site in Miami without coming back to the LNC and saying, do you guys want to go to Miami? And that's where we're at. I believe the site deposit, such as it is approximately $2,500. Is that right?
It was $500, but our obligation at this point in time is now $2,500.
So it's already been committed, Mr. Chair?
It has already been committed. That's where we're at.
Where is this now?
Where's what?
Where is this? What hotel or what?
Oh, it's in a message that Robert sent to me, but Robert, if you remember
Sure,
it.
it's the Sheraton Miami Airport and Executive Meeting Center, right within the airport, practically within the airport grounds. The room rates are $120 for a king or $130 for a double. Both include the free full hot breakfast. Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Longstreet. We almost got past
I know, right? So, Mr. Chair, is there any reason to discuss a meeting location for this, or are we committed to Miami 100%?
The LNC can change their mind or indicate
never
that they don't
did,
like
yeah.
what we did. We would just incur the cost of Miami and have to find a new site. So, Mr. Longstreet?
So I would say that at this point, financially speaking, it makes sense that we do Miami because we've committed to it. However, I would also very, very much like to express how dissatisfied I am that a decision was made that affects this entire body without the consultation of this body first being involved.
Hear, hear.
That's all I have.
Okay. Ms. Adam, or Ms. Billiou?
Can you resend whatever email he said you sent, or you said you sent?
I will send out the Miami information on Tuesday with the
Thank
links
you.
for the hotel. Can I make a quick apology?
Yep.
Okay, so I apologize because usually I do pay attention to what y'all want. And you selected 4 cities for us to look at, and we focused down. We have multiple different things for each of the 4 cities. We narrowed it down to a couple choices for each. We narrowed it down to 1 for each. At that point, I probably should have reminded the chair of what you all decided, and we should have sent the sheet that we were all looking at and the different comments that Lauren and others had in terms of fundraising to the committee. And so it was kind of, in some ways, I apologize because I did not do my job to properly remind the chair. I was more like, okay, do you want to pick one? And based on Lauren's suggestion, he went ahead and picked one, and then I said, okay, here's a contract, do you approve it? And he's like, yeah, I approve the terms, no problem, go ahead, do it. And that's when I let you all know what was going on, and that we had a link, and could make, you know, you could go ahead and make your airport, your plane reservations, what have you, and that's when it kind of grew up. So I do apologize for my part on kind of not keeping track, and possibly jumping the gun and making the chair jump the gun.
Mr. Nicola?
And barring any concerns about that, I do want to say that Miami is a good decision, not just because of the weather, but there's also some very high value donors in the greater Miami area, not too far from the airport, that state party's in contact with, and we're going to coordinate with the LNC with staff to make sure that we have a Friday night get together, we get some money for the party, and I think it's going to be a great opportunity for that meeting.
If there's no objection, Ms. Adams, then Mr. Lyons, then Mr. Goldstein.
I just want to thank Robert for stepping up and making that apology and taking ownership of something that clearly is not fully his to own. So thank you.
Here, here.
Mr. Lyons?
Took one for the team.
Do we want to decide what the standard is moving forward for how we're going to decide citing of the next meeting? And do we maybe by a close of business tomorrow want to decide how we'll have the meeting after the November meeting? And or reiterate that we were going to vote on where the sites are going to be for the meeting as a committee?
Mr. Goldstein?
I was actually going to bring that up right now since we have another 10 minutes. I would like to go ahead and, as you know, for the past couple of terms, I've always liked to get 2 meetings ahead so we could plan and take a look at weather factors and stuff like that. So I'd like to open the bidding for the meeting following the November meeting, which is usually February, March sometime. And I'd like to suggest, if possible, we take a look at some of these cities that are on the list of proposed sites for 2022. And if we want to do this by the end of business tomorrow, that's fine with me if you don't want to get it done in 9 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Smith, Ms. Billiou, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Lyons.
Let's just point out, make sure, is there a vote on the table for?
There is a.
I was suggesting that we.
Yeah, should we?
Yeah, but.
Can we make a motion to just?
I don't know.
Adopt the current location of Miami for?
Well, that's been done.
It's kind of a fait
Yeah, that's
accompli.
pretty much law.
Yeah, it's done deal, yeah.
It's done, just let it go.
Don't worry about
Let
it.
it go.
Just to remind, I mean, I understand that we're trying to get that done, but and I mostly agree with that, but just a reminder that next year being a presidential year, a lot of states are holding their conventions early. And so there will be a lot of conflict there that we may need to look at.
Is there always February now?
I'm going to at least 2 in February.
Arizona's always
Is that
January.
good? Ms. Billiou?
That was my point.
Oh, okay.
I do want to schedule in advance, though.
Yeah, I do too.
Either
I
way.
just want to remind you of that.
Ms. Billiou, Mr. Lyons, and then back to Mr. Nicola.
I'd like to suggest that we have the February meeting in Riverside, California.
No airport Is there an airport in Riverside County? Is there an airport in
I'd like to
Riverside?
suggest Hawaii.
It's close to
Ontario,
And that's where we got a bid from. It was, looking at the whole area, we got a bid by the airport.
It was rejected
It's
though.
close to it.
Mr. Nicola?
I feel that we do need a formal motion to finalize Miami, otherwise this would be out of order.
I don't think we have to. You can if you want.
There's nothing in the manual that
Somebody's
says
got to
that.
do it, though.
Yeah, there's no requirement for how it's done, but
There's no, I guess
I mean,
no one's
if-
objecting then.
yeah,
Well,
Right.
it's only an issue if
It's
somebody.
only an issue if you make it an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. Mr. Redpath?
I'd like to request the chair direct LNC staff to procure for the LNC tickets for the Jackie Gleason show in Miami Beach on Saturday night.
Is he still alive? Had he been
Right.
dead for like 20 years?
Jackie who?
Without objection, Mr. Hayes?
So there's a bunch of cities that we have looked at for the convention that look pretty good. I mean, we've got some good rates for Oakland. Indianapolis has a bid in.
Not in January, though, or February.
Oh, that's true. Let's see. So yeah,
San Diego.
We've got a couple of cities in the Bay Area. Town and Country, that's something that's we've been there before. I know some people
It'll
aren't
be
crazy.
the middle of reservation.
What's that?
They'll be pretty much closed up then
Okay.
next year. For
So what about the ones in the Bay Area?
those should work.
Okay. So that's a suggestion. We've got 2 hotels there. I'm doing a site visit at the Hilton Union Square at the beginning of August. And then I've already done a site visit at the Marriott City Center in Oakland. So those are some options there. You know, the room rate that Oakland's offering us is $149 a night if they hit that. Now, here's the thing. This will be after we've selected the 2022 site, so we could be going somewhere that
But we can sell them on the potential
for future, right? But those are some options there. So, I mean, when's the last time we did a meeting in California?
Or on the West
Long
Coast.
Ontario in 2000.
Ms. Billion?
Nope, he answered it.
Okay. Ms. Mattson?
Can I request that everybody send a list, the dates of your state conventions, so we can work on scheduling and what weekends are not going to work and are going to work? And just
If there's no objection, Mr. Nana?
I was just gonna tell her, you don't have to worry about Ohio, because it's late.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? Hearing none, we will move to an evening recess. We'll be recessed until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So it is decided it's Miami, is that correct?
It is Miami.
Okay,
And nobody
right.
has
The
raised
other
an
thing
objection
is-
to it, like a point of order or a motion.
Is 9 o'clock going to be early enough tomorrow for this? I mean, I don't know.
Up to you
Should we
guys.
consult the lead list, Madam Secretary? Because I have a feeling we're going to have a pretty full day tomorrow.
Not everyone has sent me their times, but so far it looks like 2 o'clock is when we're going to start to lose a significant time.
Well, I move we meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow, Mr. Chairman, because I think we've got a lot of work and to do yet, and some important decisions to make. And I'm sorry, Aaron, but
What, is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Go ahead, speak to your motion. to
I
amend
just
the
think
agenda.
that it's going to be a full day, and I don't think we should, if we're going to lose quorum at 2 o'clock, and I'll be here until 2:30. I don't think 5 hours is enough for tomorrow.
Okay. Is there anyone to speak against? Ms. Mattson?
I move to amend at 8:30.
There's a motion to amend, the motion to amend to be 8:30. There's a second from who? Mr. Smith. From Mr. Smith. Would you like to speak to your amendment?
No, it's a compromise.
Okay. Can we proceed to a vote on the amendments to the amendment and then the amendment?
What was,
Does anyone need to?
there was an amendment to, excuse
Mattson,
me.
to amend
I moved
8
8:30.
to 8:30.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So, all in favor of, so here's where we're at. We're gonna vote on whether or not to amend the amendment to be 8:30 instead of 8. Then we're gonna vote on whatever we come out with, whether it's 8 or 8:30, as an amendment to the agenda instead of 9, which is what it's currently set for. Okay? 2/3, as I recall, for the final motion, but not this amendment. This would be majority. All in favor of amending the motion to amend to be 8:30 instead of 8, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 8:30 is now the motion on the table. We'll now vote. This takes 2/3. A yes vote will have us start at 8:30 tomorrow. A no vote will have us starting at 9 o'clock per the agenda. All in favor of amending the agenda to be 8:30, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 opposed. 1, 2, 3. It passes. We will be resumed at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
All the West Coast people.
No, it's voluntary, you can still just show up at 9.
Mr. Mormon?
What are the dates of the next LNC meeting in Miami?
November
16th.
Brent,
Weekend of
Brent,
16th.
where's the hoops?
So I'm going to Miami. I'm going to Key West in October, Miami.
Everybody here, this room will be locked, so don't leave things in here that you want to come back and get.
You're trying to get
Conclusion of this meeting, you'll send out the information for this meeting to get.
You said it is or is not going to be locked?
It will be, it will be. I know you can do it, Aaron.
Oh. I don't know what the company is. I'm going to play at 7:20. You'll still be at the thing. I get into Boston.
Yeah, old ladies in the green rooms. Oh my God, I would buy an architect.